Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 139. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my handsome son, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today?
I'm good. I just inhaled some Zanku chicken.
Nice.
With much gusto.
Whoa.
You know?
Good for you.
So I'm feeling
like
I'm feeling like energized, but also like vaguely ill.
Yeah. You're gonna sleep. You're gonna sleep well tonight.
Yeah. I don't know. Definitely.
I like the pink on you. It looks good.
Thank you. It's actually a friend of mine's merchandise, but I actually I kind of like it. When I was growing up, like when I was a kid, like everybody had like guys weren't supposed to wear pink, you know?
Yeah.
Like that was like a thing you'd be made fun of, but I kind of like pink, honestly.
Yeah, I don't mind it
good.
at all. Well, I like that, you know, what we started seeing were the Chad type people wearing polos that were pink, but they were calling them salmon. And that was how we kind of started getting into this, to this note. But I agree with you. I think it's funny. I have a Fat Princess shirt from way back in the day that's pink and it just says Fat Princess on it. And it's awesome. I'm like, this is a great shirt. I love this pink shirt. We're also joined by executive producer of Last Stand Media and pretty much always here now, co-host.
Yeah.
Dustin Furman. Dustin, welcome. How are you?
I'm happy to be here. Like Chris, I stuffed my face a little bit, but it was like just some chips and a handful of nuts. So it's really...
I'll stuff your face with a handful of nuts.
I mean, there's plenty around here, you know, so...
Hey!
But other than that, I'm great.
I'm glad to hear that. I don't eat yet. It's not time yet.
Sure.
So I haven't eaten anything today. No
man.
calories for me yet. But how are you guys? Now, I feel like we're being a little disingenuous because we basically have already recorded the back 2.5 hours of this episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just want to say that at the top. We're recording this in inverse order because there was a state of play the day we're recording this, and we wanted to make sure to incorporate anything that was in there. Of course, as usual, there was really no reason to wait, but I'm glad we did nonetheless. So we'll get to that. But so you'll see once we get into the news, we'll talk about state of play, and then it'll go to what we've already recorded, which is 2.5 hours long from that point.
Yeah.
So that's everything else.
It's a big episode.
It's a very big episode. Well, it's good to see you guys. And thank you all out there for joining us, whether on YouTube or on podcast feeds. And of course, on Patreon. We rely on your Patreon support. Patreon.com/laststandmedia. More than 10,000 of you support us there. And we really appreciate it. You can get early ad-free access to every episode of this show, exclusive access to Sacred Symbols Plus, which is our weekly supplemental podcast that we do every week. And last week's Sacred Symbols Plus was actually really great. I had Steve Bainin on, who is a military journalist and a 13-year veteran of the U.S. Army as a scout. And he came on to talk about 6 Days in Fallujah from the interpretation of a military member, but also what the buzz is or lack thereof in military circles. So it was a really great episode. Come join us for that. Next week, I have YouTuber Legacy Killer HD on. He has like 650,000 YouTube subscribers. And I'm trying to get more guests on. I'm trying to listen to everyone.
Yeah.
And kind of break out of my shell again, as it were. People say that they like my interviewing skills, and I appreciate that. It's so funny because I have to try. I like interviewing people too, but I famously don't prepare for interviews.
Yeah.
So because I hate that. I hate preparing for interviews. Here's the reason you don't prepare for interviews. Because when you prepare for an interview, you have a linear path you want to take, but it really should be about what the subject wants to talk about, right? So, and I've been interviewed like that, where it's like, oh, we're kind of going down this other path, and like that's great, but anyway, so I want to talk about this now, and that's what preparing for interviews gets you. Instead, do a general sort of preparation of, you know, a little bit of a sampling of what's going on out there. Maybe, you know, inform yourself of a few different things.
Yeah, things you should know.
Right.
I actually, I've never interviewed anybody. But I stumbled upon a pretty good opportunity to interview somebody that was really cool, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do that.
Oh, fun.
I'm not going to say who it is yet.
You host... I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I'm not going to say who it is yet in case it doesn't happen, but...
Gotcha.
Pretty pumped about it.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, you host your podcast, right? So that's basically... I mean, you've got to keep the... Like, I'm interviewing you guys every time we do the show, basically. in some way. So give yourself a little more credit, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't host it well. I keep it rolling, and I make editing notes to myself. I guide the show more than I host it.
Sure.
But
okay. Fair enough.
yeah, it'll be fun.
Now I want to throw it over to you, Dustin, because we have big news to announce. Not only the Patreon support, we rely on that, but we finally have new merchandise. And Can you explain to everyone what's going on? Since you set this up, you did a great job.
Thank
you. So take the stage.
Yeah, so we have merchandise over at laststandmedia.shop. That's the URL, laststandmedia.shop. You put that in your web browser or whatever, it's going to take you right there. And we have a full lineup of awesome products, t-shirts, and our number one bestseller, the Sacred Symbols hoodie, which everyone's saying they really like. The hood on the inside has like a more simple version of the Sacred Symbols logo, but it's just on the inside of the hood. It's really, really cool. So we have that.
So I like how, by the way, you said everyone's saying you sound like Trump again. Like
everybody's saying they got the best merch around.
I ain't never seen merch like this.
Just in general, I've never seen merch.
I've never seen merch like this. That's it. That's all he says. Yeah.
Right.
He's seen merch. I mean, God, that red hat is probably the biggest piece of merch ever.
Ooh,
yeah. Really think about it. But all right. So it's laststandmedia.shop.
Yes.
And it's got the sweatshirts and the t-shirts and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sorry I interrupted you. So tell us what else.
Stickers. We got a Sacred Symbols face mask, which is also a big seller, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so this is our initial lineup, but we've got lots of other stuff coming as well. But we don't want to hit everybody all at once. So
we don't want to come all at once.
We do not want to come all at once. We're going to come slowly but surely.
Right. We're going to come somewhat often.
That's so upsetting. Slowly.
That is upsetting.
Colin is the king of the slow jerk. I mean, we know this.
That is my old trick, was the slow jerk, where you get you can get like 2.5 pumps a minute in. You know, like you got to really, like, it's almost going flaccid. You got it, but it's like kind of like it's a special kind of skill. But I'm talking about this as we're trying to sell our merch. But we wanted to do this. The audience has been asking for this for a long time. There's a lot of reasons why we weren't able to make it happen earlier. So I think I explained, people know this that have been around for a long time. We used to do merch with my friend Ken, who ran a site called Declaration. Really awesome merch. And he is an entrepreneur and he went to explore other stuff. So then we went to Studio 71's merch store. There are ad sellers on this show and on all of our other shows too. And they're great, but they decided to stop doing merch. And so we were kind of just left afloat for like a year. And we started getting things together in the fall. Dustin started doing that work, but then I was like, we knew we were going to rebrand, and I felt like it was totally dishonest for me to sell anything with CLS on it. So at that point, like October, I'm like, we can't. So anyway, fast forward, we're here. I'm super stoked about the stickers. We got high quality vinyl stickers. I love vinyl stickers. So of all of the logos, you can buy them individually or in a package. And very important thing to us, I know that we have a global audience, but we are an American company, and so everything is made in the USA, and that was incredibly important for us to put our money where our mouth is, instead of having what would essentially be Chinese slave labor making all of the merch,
right?
Which I don't know. I don't know who else is. I'm just going to assume every other YouTube channel has that except for us.
Oh yeah,
so,
I've definitely. I don't do that shit. I'm just like, whatever.
Also, Habroxia 2 is out. That's our game. Came out recently. We really love it. We're super proud of it. Please check it out. It's on PS4, Vita, Switch, Xbox One, and PC. And Twin Breaker is currently on sale in that mega PlayStation Network sale that's going on right now. So
cool.
You can check that out there. Yeah. There's a ton of games for sale. I like to do those tweets where I'm like, here's what you can get for this much money. And I'm going to do one of those, I think, in the coming days. And I just wanted to let everyone... Oh, you know what? Before I move on from that, actually, I forgot to tell you guys this. I mean, Dustin knows a little bit about this, and I tweeted about it a little bit earlier. I got a story for you. So sit back and let me tell you a little something.
Oh, cool, okay? Boy.
So, just to catch everyone up, most of the audience knows, but for anyone that's new, I own 49% of a game developer called Lilymo. I was going to say it was Japanese. It's a Canadian developer. They're not Japanese. It's a Canadian developer, and it's really just one other person, my friend Barry Johnson in Ontario. And so we made Twin Breaker together and we made Habroxia 2 together. He made 2 games by himself as well before that under the banner. And we are working on 2 new games now. One game will come out this year. One game will come out probably in the next 2 years, I would say. And so we were kind of looking around as to like, well, what else could we do? Like, and it came up like, could we port games or like act as some sort of intermediary? Because we self-publish on PlayStation. It's hard for developers to figure out how to do all that stuff. We already have that access because we've gone through those hoops. So we ended up talking to a developer that made a game that's already out on some other platforms to port their game to another platform. I'm not going to say who the developer is. I'm not going to say what the game is. I'm not going to say what the platform is. It doesn't matter. So all I'll say is that not so much me, but Barry was friendly with these people. And so the work on this game began. They contracted us, eyes open, to port this game for them. And then Barry text messaged me last night when I was in bed. I was in bed watching Hoarders, as I often do. And he messages me and he's like, he had great news, first of all, about something else, which we won't talk about yet. But then he had news and he's like, so XYZ had an awkward meeting with me today where they want me basically, and I'm just paraphrasing Barry, but they wanted Barry to agree to, with either a pseudonym or under his own name, port the game so that it had no relationship to Lily Mo or me. And they, now this is peculiar just because I've always, I mean, not always, but for the last year, I've owned 49% of Lily Mo. They know that we talked to them, you know.
Yeah.
So then suddenly someone must have gotten to them, right? And then, so I want to back up and just kind of as an aside say Barry's a really sweet guy. And I kind of have a soft spot for everyone. I want everyone to be treated well. But when you're a nice person, like a sweet person, I have an especially big problem with you being mistreated and put in a corner. And so Barry was really upset by this. And they said to Barry, well, Barry's like, we're not doing that. I'm not doing that. Because Barry's, you know, a stand-up person, nice guy, wouldn't throw me to the wolves, throw me away. And so they were like, okay. And Barry was like, well, if it's a problem, we have to figure out if this game's canceled or whatever. What do you guys want to do? And they were like, and their response to that was like, well, okay, well, we have to think about how we want to proceed and if we want the game to be canceled and how we might want to go about it. And then so Barry told me this, and then I'm like, I'm going to make the decision right now, Barry. The game's canceled. So I told Barry the game is canceled, and I was thinking about, well, I don't know what the contract says and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, if we are out any sort of money, I will pay whatever money would have been owed up to this point in the project before whatever milestone to make sure we don't lose any money as a company, but we're not publishing or porting this game. Mm-hmm. And so I made that decision for them. And I just thought that was an interesting story that I wanted to share with everyone about what's going on out here in these game development streets. And so it's an incredibly strange situation. And it put my friend Barry in a really awkward scenario. Someone who's never done anything to anyone.
Yeah.
And I said on Twitter, we don't want hall monitor money. You can take your hall monitor money, your tattletale journalism money, and your defamation money and shove it way far up your ass. We don't want it. I don't need it. We don't need the work. We were doing it, by the way, to just learn new pipelines and new tool sets. Yeah. We have 2 games. We make plenty of money to do just only our own games as a studio. We were trying to do it as like an educational thing and to help some friends out. They end up spitting in my friend Barry's face. Barry and hey, here's the bigger thing too. And people pointed this out to me because I was kind of, you know, it hurt when I read it. So I didn't think about it from this perspective. They're like, these motherfuckers are trying to draw a wedge between you two to basically wedge Barry off. Because, you know, and it's like, you're right. Not only is it a business and corporate thing, that's very personal. Barry's my friend.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. It's
one of my very only friends, to be honest with you, like in the world, you know, it's you guys and in this world. It's like, I don't have that many close friends in the gaming world, you know. Sorry, Chris.
No, I think it's just such a weird it's a weird thing to do after they've already talked to you guys. And after they kind of already know, like, it's not a secret that you own this developer, you know?
Yeah,
like,
it's weird.
It's just a very weird because it seems to indicate that they were fine with it before somebody told them, you know?
Yeah, and I agree, and it also shows that they're also hypocrites, because the implication was that, like, we would still get paid as a unit, like as a company.
Yeah.
It's just that Lily Mo would basically be doing shadow work, you know? And it's just, that's the weird part too. It's like, so you don't even have the conviction to say, like, we don't want you, you know?
Yeah,
that was
we'll
the weird
take
thing,
you.
is like,
we'll take you, but we won't admit it.
Right, we'll take
Yeah.
you. We'll still pay the guy we don't like, and get the work done, because I still would have gotten 49% of the money.
Yeah,
You know, so it was a weird, very weird thing that when it happened, I'm like, at first I was thinking about myself, then I was talking to Barry, then I was getting everything sorted, but then I'm like, I got to tell the audience.
yeah.
So the next day I woke up and I asked Barry, I'm like, can I tweet about this? And he's like, as long as you don't use any specifics. And I'm like, I wouldn't, because I'm not trying to bring direct smoke against anyone. Just know, if anyone out there is watching, we don't want your hall monitor money. Okay? We don't.
Yeah.
I don't want the hall monitor work. I don't want to be in that ecosystem. And here's the other thing, guys. I still don't even really know what I did. That's the biggest thing of all, right? I'm burying the lead, of course. I don't even know what I did.
It's literally just like a game of telephone at this point. It's like,
Right.
It's just completely random. I've come across this too, where like, and I've done work like that, just for the same reasons, just to learn it, and just cause, like, yeah, man, you know, I like money. I do.
Sure. Who
And
doesn't? I love money.
I've done editing work under pseudonyms, and you've likely seen it, and that's fine. Like, I don't give a shit. But it is, I do it specifically because I know that, like, if at any point, you know, anybody tries to pull some shit, it's like, oh, like, when you hired me to do this, like, and, like, you were totally fine with it, as long as you weren't, like, public about it. I mean, come on, dude.
It's a special sort of cowardice.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I don't understand is that they could have gone about this in a way, like, let's say behind the scenes, they're like, oh, we don't want Colin attached to this project. They could have said to Barry, they could have said, hey, we don't want people to know that an outside company ported our game. Is there a way that we can hire you in a more shadow type way, just so it doesn't look like XYZ, which I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing that a developer would do.
No, it does. No, dude, there are developers, there are ghost developers that make games that, like, there's studios that have made hundreds of games that don't have credits, you know?
Yeah.
Like, especially in Japan, like, there are studios you've never even heard of that are making these games.
So
I think it's like any creative medium, really. It's like in music, you have ghostwriters, and, you know, it's just a normal thing.
Yeah, like script doctors and stuff like that. It's the same thing where people come in and don't get credit. And then you hear, like, 25 years later, it's like, did you know Roseanne wrote the script, you know, like, fixed the script to X,
Did you know
Y, Z?
Roseanne,
I'm like, what?
Did you know Roseanne wrote The Shining?
Sorry.
The point just is that, like, they could have achieved the goal that they wanted.
Yeah,
most
definitely.
likely.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, it just seems, quite frankly, fucking stupid that they would even go about it that way. And also, Colin, I want to share, when you texted me this last night, my response was, fuck them. And I put a lot of U's because.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, yeah, fuck you. And we're building our own thing here. But moreover, I'm not going to have that offensive posture to people, but I'm going to defend my own people, right? Mm-hmm, this is an overt attack on Barry and me. And people were right. It was a wedge between two people that love each other and care about each other and work together and made two games together. You know, it's not some trivial sort of thing. So we can just throw that port right in the fucking garbage. It really makes no difference to our bottom line whatsoever. And we'll just move on and see what else the future holds. But I wanted to tell the audience that nonetheless.
It's an interesting story. And
yeah, I thought you might enjoy that.
That's good.
All right. What else is going on here? We've gone so long, you know, I'm just going to skip this one. I did want to tell people. So this is pretty cool. So Sony's doing that play at home thing again this year. They did it last year too, where they gave a game away or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but they're doing it again this year, where Ratchet and Clank from 2016 on PS4 will be free for everyone that owns a PlayStation 4. And once you acquire it in March, you will own it forever. So consider it a new PS Plus game. And if you're one of those PS Plus people or one of those people that don't have PS Plus, this is one of those times where you should go and grab the game. And it'll be a nice primer for you for I was going to call it Into the Nexus, but that's not what it's called. Whatever it's called. Rift Apart. So I wanted to let people know that. And I wanted to just point people to a couple of things. I didn't want to make this a story in the news, but there is an Illinois state representative trying to pass a law in Illinois banning the sale outright of violent video games. People can go read about it. It's due to carjackings that are happening in Chicago. And there's a Chicago Sun-Times article about it that you guys can go read by a guy named Zach Klingenpeel. That's his name, Zach Klingenpeel. And the representative is named Marcus Evans. But people can go read about it. I don't even really... The bottom line is that the U.S. Supreme Court has already ruled that video games are an expression of the First Amendment. And so these laws are illegal.
Yeah,
so it's not even worth talking about. But I wanted to not ignore it outright.
Yeah, no, I tweeted about it because... I don't know if you guys have seen this, but have you seen that Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up?
Yes, it's cursed.
They did like a 4K 60 frame restoration of it. That's what I felt like watching that news report of the guy talking about how like you're gonna ban Grand Theft Auto, because it's like in 60 frames, it's in like high def, but it's like this 2006 ass news report where it's like, this feels like it's from the past, but I know it's not, and that is sending me into a spiral of, doubt and just like, am I okay? Am I perceiving things correctly? It's such a weird video.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the Rick Astley one though, because I watched it like 3 or 4 times probably, because I was like, I can't believe this. It's there's some fucked up stuff in it when you start watching it, but
yeah, if you slow it down, you get to see like them become like Cronenbergs, but it's a rough watch.
Yeah, I would agree. By the way, the Supreme Court case, I was just looking it up, is Brown versus Entertainment Merchants Association from 2011, which the court said 7-2, video games were protected speech under the First Amendment. So even if that law passed, it would be nullified by the U.S. Constitution, but I didn't want to ignore it outright, so people can go check that out. Also, there's an interesting Techland expose. So Techland, of course, the developer behind Dying Light 2 and, of course, the original Dead Island as well. It's on thegamer.com. It's really long, and it doesn't say very much, but it certainly gives interesting insight into what's going on at that studio, and it's totally fucked up. So... yeah. Go check that out. And we do cite later on in the video, Jim Ryan, CEO of PlayStation, talked to both GQ and Washington Post in extensive interviews, so you can go read those as well. And finally, Mr. Bojangles says, hey guys, how many times does Chris reply with yeah, no, or no, yeah? It seems he is unsure all the time, and it's making me unsure of his unsureness. Stay classy. See, I don't interpret it as unsureness. It's your way in. And we all kind of have those,
I'm trying not to say no, yeah. Man, that's really hard. I do that a lot. I think it's just, it's something my family does a lot. It's a habit that I've picked up from like my dad. My dad will go like, oh, no, yeah, it's fine. Or like, yeah, nah. I say it too. I'm not going to do that. It's almost like an address. It's like you address that you're going to participate in the conversation, and then you give your answer, but they can't be the same. Like you can't say like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Or like, no, I don't, like, because you sound insane. I am definitely like unsure about it. I don't think I've ever been sure about anything because I'm too hyper aware of the branching paths that the universe takes.
Sure.
So I just think every moment that I make any decision, I'm always thinking like, is this the decision that puts me in a mansion, or is this the decision that puts me in the grave in like 3 days? I'm always thinking that.
Those are high stakes.
High stakes. Everything's at the highest stakes that could possibly be. Like I'm a very uncertain person. I never know if I'm doing the right thing ever. But in those instances, that's just my family just coming through It's the DNA. And my if I ever have kids, they're going to talk like that too. I'm going to make sure that they blight every conversation with yeah no's and no yes.
Thank you for writing in, Mr. Bojangles. All right, it's time to talk about what we're playing. Chris, you're not playing anything. You've been busy, so we can skip right over you.
Yeah.
Right? Do you have any explanation as to why you're not playing?
I've just been swamped with like work and like deadlines and also just like some stuff that I'm not talking about exactly yet. But yeah, no, I haven't been playing anything. I've been trying to. Like, I remember I turned on my PS5 and I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go through a Hitman level again. And then I started it up and I got so stressed out that I immediately turned it off. I was like, it's not right. I can't do this. So
it speaks to the game's quality, perhaps.
Yeah, I didn't want to sully my experience of it with any stressful interpretations.
Understood. Dustin, let's kick it over to you. It says here you're playing Persona 5 Strikers and Dark Souls 3. I'll let you take them in whatever order you choose.
Yeah, so I'm not as far into Persona 5 Strikers as I would like, so my impressions are still surface level, but I do have to say that it is pretty cool. It's neat. It's very much a sequel to Persona 5, which they kind of lightly tease that along the way. So this is definitely not a game you can play, or should play, I should say, if you have not played the original Persona 5. But it's been interesting just because I've never played a Musou style game before. But it's weird because it has a lot, like there's a million enemies on the screen, you can play as multiple different characters and stuff like that. But it incorporates a lot of Persona elements, like being able to swap between different personas, teaching them different abilities, stuff like that. So it's I think I didn't give them enough credit before, thinking about how well they were able to incorporate the existing game into this new spin-off, which is really cool. You can tell like there's a lot of budget there. It feels a lot like, I mean, it is a spin-off, but it feels super high quality. It does not feel like an afterthought at all.
So this is not a baseball game, right? This is not like Super Mario Strikers?
No. I would play a Persona baseball game. I mean...
yeah, it might not be a bad idea.
But
was Strikers the baseball game, or was that the soccer game?
Was it? I thought it was Strike because it's you strike
because
out.
of the baseball. Yeah, maybe.
Am I wrong? It's the soccer one, actually.
No, you might be right. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Is it called Super Mario Baseball? It can't be.
I don't know. Super Mario Sluggers, maybe? Super Mario
Sluggers sounds familiar.
Super Mario.
Oh yeah, you're right. Strikers is the. Did I fabricate a baseball Mario game?
No,
is that not...
there was a baseball game. Was it called Sluggers? Super Mario Sluggers? Something like that? I don't think so. I think I made that up.
Oh, it's literally just Mario Superstar Baseball.
Oh, okay. That was on Wii, right?
And Super Mario Super Sluggers. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, okay. See, I was right.
Yeah, look at that.
There's something going on here in this head.
You got something.
You know.
I got something going on in there.
So yeah, it's cool.
And so all right. So Persona 5 Strikers, recommended. Musou.
Yes.
And then Dark Souls 3.
Yeah, I am streaming that game over on my channel if you want to come hang out. But it's been cool just because it's like, did you ever have a game that you spent so many hours in and then you're gone for years and years and then you come back and it's so familiar yet feels new once again? That's where I'm at with this game. I put, I think, over 70 hours into it back in 2016, I think was when it came out. And so to return, it's been great. And it's been cool just because I just finished Dark Souls 1 and 2. And so you can really feel the progression of the series. And it's really, really fantastic. I am really loving it.
That's awesome. One of my favorite things about playing games back to back like that. Like, it's just like feeling the immediate like improvement, like between titles. It's so satisfying, especially just to know that it's always getting like. Well, I guess not in Dark Souls because Dark Souls 2 like got a little bit worse. I think like because 2 was like famously bad, right?
Yeah,
or like famously at least disliked.
Right.
But it's, I don't know.
Dude, and it's sad because sometimes you can't go back. Like I've tried to go back and play Oblivion.
It's rough.
It's rough. It's real. Yeah. I'm sure you could, but you gotta completely change your mindset into like playing an old game. But
Yeah, in the same way with KOTOR.
yeah,
In the words of Matthew Fox on Lost, we've got to go back. So
Classic Lost line that everybody remembers.
I mean, well, actually, everyone will remember that because that's like half of the thing that they say on the entire show.
We've got to go back.
We got to go back. There was just a commercial over and over again they used to play with Matthew Fox. I fucking hated that show. I didn't even want to talk about it.
How dare you?
I'm sorry.
How dare you?
I did like it in the first 2 seasons. It was great. You know, the numbers and the hatch and the guy with the computer. And,
Desmond.
Right. Yeah, I love that first episode of the 2nd season where they go down and you see him for the first time. Very cool. All right. You know what? I'm going to watch Lost again. I've just decided. I just literally made that decision in my head right now.
It's good.
I've just dedicated what will be 170 hours or something of my life now.
Though, Colin, did you watch?
Yeah.
Did you watch The Leftovers?
No, a lot of people have recommended
It's
me that
way
as well.
shorter, and I'm probably better. Same writer. It's very good.
What is it, like JJ? No,
Lindelof.
Lindelof, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'm playing Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 still and RFL still. Nothing new to really report on either of these. Puyo Puyo Tetris is so fun. I just play it for a few minutes every night when I get into bed, and I'm not very good still at the Puyo side of the game, but I'm getting better. I'm understanding it more.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much in the game that it's like the Division 2. Maybe it's just me. There's a lot of things in this game I don't understand. Like their characters are leveling up and there's like, it's very weird. I don't know what's going on.
It seems like a little over seasoned for Tetris. Yes, yeah, Tetris is, to me, it's like a New York slice. It's like a cheese pizza, like a basic plain slice in New York, like just like a perfect. It's like, oh, so good. There's not a problem with this at all.
Right.
And the second you start adding like the leveling systems and like the Puyo stuff, and it's like, okay, this is good still. You got like mushrooms, you got pepperoni maybe, but it's getting to the point where like this is max that you could put on Tetris.
And then the pizza starts flopping, you can't even hold it.
Yeah, that's when the live service battle royale starts coming in.
Right,
it starts drooping and the cheese falls off.
And then it's all greasy, and then it gets I love this analogy. It's an analogy I understand.
Yeah,
as a lover of pizza. Sacred Symbols is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes conventional wisdom becomes conventional wisdom because it's true. And one such piece of unavoidable conventional wisdom is that we need to take care of our minds like we take care of our bodies. Our bodies get sick, they ache and hurt, they need downtime and repair. Our minds are no different. And while the taboo around mental maintenance has thankfully decreased greatly over the last few decades, we as a people simply aren't tending properly to that essential upkeep. I think therapy is a great tool to sort through whatever's going on in your mind and to discover the tools that will help you persevere through challenges and tribulations. This is where BetterHelp attempts to steer a different, more positive, and more constructive course. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't even have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. BetterHelp provides that help you need to deal with depression, anxiety, and much more, and equips you with the tools to better handle the mental and emotional stresses of everyday life. Even if you're lacking in scholarly, professional, or personal motivation, or you're having temper issues, or dealing with relationship or friendship troubles, or issues at work, a BetterHelp therapist can hear you out and help you begin a more positive journey. So give BetterHelp a try by going to betterhelp.com/symbols. That's BetterHelp.com/SYMBOLS. And get 10% off your first month of sessions. Take care of yourself, body, and mind at betterhelp.com/symbols. That's betterhelp.com/symbols. Let's get into the news. The first piece of news is State of Play. I have nothing written about it. I just have notes in sequence here, so none of my usual news spiel for this one. But by my count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It seems like they talked about 10 games. Mm-hmm. And we'll just take them in order and see if we have anything to say about them. We don't have to spend any time on some of these games if you don't want to, but I'll let you guys be the arbiter of that. We'll start with Crash 4, which they opened with on PS5. We already knew it was coming to PS5, but they kind of outlined some of the nice quirks that are coming and the updates and all that. Chris, are you excited about this? We talked a little bit about this last week, but did seeing it in motion do anything for you?
No, not really. Like I knew it was like I'm happy about it. It's cool. I don't think it needed a slot in a state of play personally. Like, this is a game that's been out for a while, and it's awesome, and everybody should play it if they're a fan of platformers, especially if they're a fan of the original Crash games, because I think it's genuinely a worthy successor to those titles, and I don't say that lightly. But, you know, it's everything that I expected, 60 frames, 4K. It's cool that that they've got adaptive triggers and they're using the PlayStation card system with the PS5. That's cool. It's nice to see that there's a free upgrade, but it's nothing new ultimately. It's all Crash footage that we've seen before, or Crash footage that I've played before, and I'm looking forward to it, but this isn't it's not groundbreaking or exciting news.
Yeah, it was a little weak of an opening, I thought. What did you think, Dustin?
Yeah, I don't know.
Set the tone, I think.
Yeah, it's just one of those. It's like 4K 60. I
this
just
is
don't
to be
even
expected
know.
now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, all right. So let me build off on your morose nature right now, Dustin.
Sure.
Because let me construct something on top of it. Because what I'm thinking here with these state of plays is that they so transparently are constructed around marketing deals made with individual developers and publishers that's the reason they exist. It's really not. It's not informative. So it comes off as a marketing tool, It's like, well, here's Crash Bandicoot 4 again, even though we did a PlayStation blog post and even though we put up 7 trailers and it's like, and I understand that, like, we're the hardcore.
Yeah.
Right.
But Nintendo Direct, whether you like them or not, doesn't come off like that. It doesn't come off like we're trying to check boxes because we have to please everyone and we got to get Square Enix in here and then we got to get our own guys in here. And there's really not been a strong state of play, I think, since maybe the first one, which is crazy. Chris.
There is one thing I will say. The thing that really it saved the Crash trailer, at least for me, was the announcer was talking about the haptic feedback, and he mentioned that you could. There's a character in the game with a vacuum gun, and he said you can really feel the suck, and I appreciated that. It gave me like a nice smile. But
it made it all worth it.
It made it all worth it. Yeah.
Well, it's good to know. All right, so that comes out March 12th. Like Chris said, free upgrade if you already own it on PS4.
Yeah, absolutely get it, but nothing new.
So the next game they showed is the only Sony published game that we saw today, and we saw no first party games, which we'll talk about towards the end. But Returnal from Housemarque. It looks great. This is the first time we've really seen more gameplay upon what little we have seen so far. I love the protagonist. I'm really into female protagonists right now. I just it's vibing with me. I'm really excited to see Housemarque work in this 3D space. And you can tell it's a Housemarque game. If you're a fan of their stuff, especially with the way things explode and like move apart, it's very Housemarque-ish. It's very Resogun-ish specifically with them. It almost looks voxelish. And I am not a huge roguelike fan, but I am really excited to play this. Not only because I'm eager for a PlayStation 5 exclusive, God forbid we get any of those. We don't want any of those, guys. No PlayStation. We don't want any PlayStation 5 exclusives until everyone has a PlayStation 5. That's what I've been informed. But also because I think it does look authentically fun. You can see the loop there. And because it's so close to development, or close to release rather, and I was talking to Micah about this, I'm so sick of seeing games with no UI because it makes every game look so clean. And so seeing a game so close with the UI intact gives you a better idea of what the game is going to be. What did you think of what you saw, Chris?
Yeah, I'm kind of that. I agree with what you just said about UI. It's really cumbersome and annoying whenever they like do this like cinematic camera thing, because it's like it's like half the game. It's kind of half the game that you're not seeing in a lot of ways, because the UI is such a huge part of the experience. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have like a huge connection to Housemarque. I don't have like a storied history playing their games or anything. But this one, I think I'm just gonna have to play it to understand, because it seems like it feels good to play. I just don't know. It seems a bit dark. It seems like very dark, I feel like it's going to be a hard game to see in. And I don't know if like maybe that's the point, is like kind of like the explosions will maybe like kind of like light your way, or like maybe combat allows you to more accurately or more reliably assess the battlefield. I think that's a cool concept. I don't know if it's necessarily what they're going for, but It just seems very strange. Like there's that vignette that ends the trailer and it looks like she steps into the PT house and it's like confusing.
Dude, it's so funny you said that. I wrote in my notes, Returnal PT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just switches to a first-person game all of a sudden, and she's like in the PT house, and I'm like, I don't know if it is, like I don't think it is, but it looks like super similar, and I'm just like,
definitely.
I don't know what this is. Like I still have I've seen the game in motion, and I still have no fucking clue, like what I'm looking at.
I'm gonna blow your mind right now. Imagine if Returnal is some sort of Silent Hill lead-in that teases some sort of function of whatever's going on in the new Silent Hill game, some sort of time loop situation or whatever.
Whoa.
That would find out it's connected to PT, and they're going to extract PT and make it into, I gave some of you guys goosebumps out there.
That would be amazing.
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So don't get too excited. Dustin, are you looking forward to Returnal anymore now that you've seen it?
I like the overall feeling I'm getting. Very Eldritch, one might say.
Sure,
very
definitely.
Cosmic horror, which is pretty cool. I love specifically the movie Annihilation, and some of the weirdness that's going on in that trailer kind of reminded me of that. So I still want to see, like, because it's a roguelike, so you're going to be doing a loop of some kind. Show me like one or two of those. Like, I want to know what is 20 minutes in Returnal.
Yeah.
Like, so, because I just am still, as I said before, a little just concerned about the overall package. I think what we've seen looks great, but I need to know what the moment to moment in the flow of the game is, we'll say.
Yeah, it's very well said. I agree. I would love to see a 30-minute developer walkthrough or something. Although I think from my perspective, I've seen enough. I don't even really want to know anymore. But you're right. We don't really know how the game functions. One of the things we've seen in the UI, which I thought was interesting, unless it's turned off so far in what we've seen, the footage last time and this time, is there seems to be no score, which is very weird for a Housemarque game. So it's that I'm very intrigued by, because that was all their games were structured around, was scoring, like getting higher and higher scores. So I don't know if there's a different element, a leveling element, some loot element. I don't know. They didn't explain enough.
Well, they said
but the game comes out April 30th, so it's coming soon. It's coming soon. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, but they said that. Yeah, no, it's fine. They said something about like upgrades and like getting new weapons and stuff like that. It's like, all right, this is. I mean, it seems like standard roguelike stuff, but I'm just curious as to what the execution is going to be. Because I do like the cosmic, like landing on like a planet and then your fucking house is there, and it's like, what is that? Just that premise by itself is like really interesting.
Yeah, it's dope. I agree.
I just wonder how much of that game is going to be that cool premise, and how much of it is just going to be like, kind of jetpacking around and shooting indistinguishable aliens because it's so fucking dark.
Yeah, we'll find out. I would assume that sometime in late March, early April, we'll get what you're talking about, Dustin.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they're going to release this game without doing something like that. That would be a huge mistake, especially because they're asking for $70 for this game, and that's already going to be a tough sell.
Right.
And nothing I'm seeing of the game shines $70, by the way. And just in terms of scope, now that's their fault for not selling me well enough on it, I guess. But I think that's the wrong price point. I hope they don't kill it prematurely. And now they can't drop the price, because then before releasing it, because it's just going to kill value proposition on the game. People are gonna be like, oh, you don't even think you're seeing bad pre-order numbers, and so they're married to that now. All right, the next game they showed was an EA published game. So EA's got to get in now, guys. We already got Activision, and now EA's in. Velan Studios' Knockout City for PS4. This was announced a week or two ago, because we brought it up in the roundup, or the wrap up at the end of the news segment, I think a week or two ago. But this Velan Studios is upstate New York, so that's kind of cool. There's no one up there, which is neat. Yeah. And I actually think this game looks cool, although I just feel like it's another one of these games that's just going to die, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I actually like the premise of it a lot. I think it's a game that I would actually try out. Like it does look. I like dodgeball in general. I played that shit like a ton, and like I loved just any excuse you have to just. Oh, I'm playing a sport in school that allows me to just deliberately inflict harm on people. It's not even about getting like a thing to a goal or anything. It's literally just I'm gonna nail this guy. And they just had kids doing that with like the strongest balls you'd ever seen.
I loved it.
Strong balls.
Yeah, and I think
you've never seen balls stronger than that.
I think it's a cool premise. I think it's neat. I just I don't know. I worry that the style of it makes it look like everything else, and I worry that it's just going to get lost in a sea of other releases, or just probably not going to pop up on people's radar, and that sucks because like a team from upstate New York, that's awesome. That's like where my family is, and it's like there's like a sense of not pride in that, but there's like a sense of like local kind of like, oh, that's awesome, like I'm happy that an upstate team got into the state of play. But yeah, it's a game that I think is honestly probably from a quality standpoint, I think it's probably pretty good, but I just worry about its actual viability in the like online, Yeah,
it's just EA continues to want to put the stuff out and compete in the space, and I just don't know what the point is. But because I agree, I think dodgeball is dope, and there aren't very many dodgeball video games. Super Dodgeball. I mean, that's like a Kunio-kun River City Ransom old like spinoff. So
yeah,
it would be pretty cool to see more of that explored. But Dustin, do you want to play Knockout City?
No.
All right.
Not at all. I mean, did this not have the Fortnite like art style vibe to you guys?
It did, but not as bad as Rocket whatever Arena or whatever.
Yeah, true. I'll give it that. Yeah.
It looks a little bit
or Destruction All Stars, which is just
yeah. It looks a little bit more stylized than Fortnite. Like I don't want to get into this habit of saying that everything that looks cartoonish looks like Fortnite, because it's definitely not true. Like Sunset Overdrive doesn't look like Fortnite, and like there's ways to kind of move within that style without being like a direct reminder. But it was definitely close, but it was far enough away that it didn't bother me in that way. But yeah, I don't know.
By the way, you brought up Sunset Overdrive. Just a quick aside, I didn't put this into the news today, but a few days ago, Drew Murray, who co-directed Sunset Overdrive and Resistance 3, went to the Initiative, as we knew when the studio was founded, and then he quit the Initiative and went back to Insomniac. He announced this week, so maybe Resistance will come back. Who knows?
We'll see.
Who knows?
Since Marcus Smith and Drew Murray were the guys who brought Resistance 3 to life, they're back together. Also, they brought Sunset Overdrive together to market together, and they're back together. So it's great. Very good news. The next game that was shown is, I think, called Sifu.
Sifu.
Sifu,
yeah.
But it's from Slow Clap, and they did that game Absolver like 3 or 4 years ago, which was like the multiplayer, like beat 'em up weird game. But this looked really cool. I think out of actually all the games we saw today, with the exception of the end, which I thought was kind of cool, this was the game I was probably most amped about. I think that with maybe Kenna would dive in there too, but I'm really looking forward to this game. It looks really stylish, and I'm just looking for stuff that feels and looks a little different. Dustin, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, I thought this looked pretty cool. I never played Absolver, but I always thought it looked really interesting with its emphasis on hand-to-hand combat. And I think they had a pretty unique online system with that game as well. So yeah, it definitely looked pretty appealing.
Chris, you have any notes on Sifu?
Yeah, no, it looks cool. I remember the first shot that I saw of it was just like, oh, they're doing like a whole game that's just the fucking hallway fight from the Raid or whatever. That's what it looked like anyway. Or the Raid 2, I think, is what it's from. But yeah, I'm all about it. They do hand-to-hand combat really well, and the way this is animated and the way that attacks kind of lead into other ones, really impressive. Like, it's genuinely like impressive animation work. If it plays as fluidly as it looks, then that's a pretty huge achievement, and I'm all for it. But obviously that's the key. They got to nail that fluidity, because I've seen games that look great as far as animation goes, but like you play them and it's like, yeah, I just pressed a button and a really cool animation happens, is basically what it feels like. It really needs to feel like you're guiding the animation, and that's not always super easy to do, but they have a pretty good understanding of hand-to-hand combat. So this is definitely one of the stronger ones that we saw.
Next up was Solar Ash from Heart Machine, the guys that did Hyper Light Drifter. Hyper Light Drifter just didn't do it for me. I don't know why. I was just totally turned off to that game. This game looks cool, but I don't know that that's really one that I'm going to explore personally. Chris, are you interested in this one?
So is this the one that looks like the Pathless?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Because I was watching it and I was like, this looks shockingly like the Pathless. Like even to the way that the character moves. I don't want to say it's exactly the same because it's definitely not. I think this one's definitely more focused on keeping momentum going as opposed to kind of making the player find ways to keep making momentum going. That was one of my key points of frustration with the Pathless. It was like I always wanted to go faster, but I couldn't quite get to the speed that I felt the game wanted me to. So this looks cool, and I appreciate the Shadow of the Colossus style like battle that they showed at the end with that like stone or bone serpent going up in the clouds. Very, very Shadow of the Colossus. Very cool. I definitely might look at this because I like games with art styles that are creative, and I like games that look distinct. And I also like anything that looks remotely like Shadow of the Colossus. So
fair enough.
I'm gonna give it a shot. I do think it looks a bit derivative of the Pathless, and I think that's a little awkward because they're so close to each other, I think, in time. And we'll see how that goes, but it looks like it could be a good time.
And what's ironic about that, too, is the Pathless was also published by Annapurna.
Yeah.
So
Noticing a pattern.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
An Anna pattern.
They showed more Five Nights at Freddy's. I just kind of I don't know. I just kind of shut off at that point.
Yeah, I fell asleep, actually, and I cracked my head and bled.
So I have nothing to say about that. That's the most blatant example of Sony having a marketing deal where it's like, stop showing this over and over. I think that's 3 in a row, if I'm not mistaken. So
it feels like it.
I think it is. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to see this anymore. I don't care. After this was Oddworld Soulstorm.
Mm-hmm.
We have a date of April 6th on PS4 and PS5. Now, I like Lorne Lanning. I have to say, though, that this is another game that I feel like this is a marketing thing. It's like, stop showing this. You know, I don't understand why you're showing this over and over again. But I know you're excited about it, Chris, so I don't want to take any wind out of your sails. What do you think?
No, I definitely agree. They've shown it too many times before this without a date. You know what I mean? Like they should have just when they had a date in mind, they should have just showed it and maybe had a more conservative marketing push, because it began to feel like Spider-Man for a while. You know, where there's just like trailer, but like unlike Spider-Man, it never came out. So it's nice to have a date, and you know, I love Lorne Lanning. I love the way that Oddworld feels tonally. I'm really happy that it's in keeping with the style of the original Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exodus, which I think were peak Oddworld. I enjoyed Munch's Odyssey too, but you know, I think it was definitely strongest in the Odyssey series, and to see that back and to see like all these, you know, looting mechanics and like all these like light crafting that doesn't look too overbearing. I think it's going in a really cool direction. I think it looks really good. Even just the little things they just seem to get right. Like even that ending screen where it just showed the release date and it had the still image of the character and his eyes were moving but nothing else was, and it's just like this slight sense of like uncanny like uncomfortability, and it like lingered for an uncomfortably long time. It's like this. I love the playful uncomfortability of Oddworld is just something that is not captured really often in modern games, and I'm happy to see it back, and I'm excited for April, man. Like that's so exciting to me. There's
definitely a weird feeling of like it's a silly game in a lot of ways. Like there's characters getting hit by stuff and flying all over the place, but it's also a game like about slavery. So it's definitely like a weird mix, you know.
It juggles those tones really, really masterfully, I think, and you know, that's I'm just really excited. I love Oddworld. I've always loved Oddworld, and it's actually wild that there's even a new one at all.
Right. Key detail: this game is going to be free on PlayStation 5.
Yeah, I was reading my notes. I was going to say that when it got back to me. Yeah,
sorry.
so that's no, you're not. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I was saying that was the only note I had was that, and I like that he used the term 2.9D, which I thought was kind of cool. Although I'm not a fan of 2.5D anything, so you can't sell me on that unless and no matter what you call it, unless it's very specific situation.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, that's always been what Oddworld was, though. Like you could walk around it. You could walk around in the background.
Right.
But yeah,
it's cool. I like Lorne Lanning. Like I said, he's always been really nice to me. He's really friendly, and I've had fun with him. But certainly, it just seems like what is the initiative behind showing Oddworld over and over again? Who knows? But April 6th, and like Dustin said, PS5 will be free. So similar to some of these other games that have been coming out recently. So I'm going to grab it for sure.
Yeah.
All right. After that, they showed Kenna Bridge of Spirits from Ember Lab. Hadn't seen this game in a while. We have a date for it now of August 24th. This game looks great. I'm really excited about this one. I was hoping it was going to come out a little sooner, but that will probably be a good time because Returnal will have come out and then Ratchet, and then we'll presumably be waiting for Horizon at that point, but we don't really know now what's going on with that. So anyone have any thoughts on Kenna? Dustin, what do you think of this one?
Something doesn't match up for me in this game. It looks too good for a new studio. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it looks awesome. I'm really excited to play it. And I was doing some research on Ember Lab, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is their first game because they used to do animation, I think. So, I mean, if they come out of the gate with, as and this game is as awesome as it looks, I mean, that's great for them. But it's cool. We've reached the Pixar level animation with, well, not exactly, but it's pretty damn close, at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was watching it and I'm like, I'm really quite struck by so many facets of this game. I think it looks really pretty, but it looks fun. It looks smooth, and you're right. It is a really impressive opening salvo. Although when you're showing a game aesthetically, if you're an animation studio, you certainly have your aesthetic down already. So yeah, August 24th for Kenna. Chris, are you going to play this one?
Yeah, no, it looks cool. I think it looks really gorgeous. I think the style and the aesthetic of it is like really on point. I like good art styles. It did remind me though, like the entire time. Not to say that these are even similar games at all, but it reminded me a lot of Cameo from the 360 in like 2005 or 2006. Sure. I was like, oh yeah, it's like if that game was better, probably.
Next up, they showed Arcane's Deathloop again. Now, this one's a little more understandable. They have a deal with this to get it on PS5 for a limited time only. So, and this also would be the case with another Bethesda published game in Ghostwire Tokyo, which we have not seen. I think that I guessed later on in the show that we would see it, but maybe not. Maybe I didn't do that here. Maybe I did that somewhere else. But I continue to really be excited about this. I don't even really want to see any more. I don't need to see any more to be sold on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing I did say when I wrote in my notes though that I think shown through in this particular production we saw was the Dishonored kind of nature of it. Mm-hmm. You can see it more now, which is interesting. What do you think, Chris?
I adored this trailer. Like this is such a good trailer. Like it nailed the tone of what they were going for. I think just the idea of like, hey, it's Dishonored, but it's like a time loop 70s Bond style action shooter, and it's like, yes, those are what an amazing pairing of words to pitch as your game, and even down to the fact that they had their own Bond theme where it's like Deathloop, and it's like, oh, it's fucking absurd but not stupid, and I think that's what I really love just the style and just the fluidity that it looks like it has. It totally looks like Dishonored. It looks like there's like, I don't know if there's going to be as much of an emphasis on stealth in this. It did open up with like him going invisible and, walking around with a blade. So there's definitely going to be some stealth elements in there. But even if there was no stealth at all, like just the combat of Dishonored was an aspect of Dishonored that I really, really liked, that I feel like a lot of people just didn't experience because they played it like a stealth game. And it's a great stealth game. But like that combat in Dishonored is so good. Like you watch people speedrun that game, it's some of the most impressive shit you've ever seen. It's wild. And I'm just very happy to see Arcane kind of going back into this style of game and doing it in such a distinct way, because I genuinely can't think of a game that elicits the same kind of vibe as this. You know what I mean? It's like very distinct in tone and in vibe and in aesthetic, despite the fact that it doesn't seem to be... Like, if you looked at the assets on their own, you wouldn't necessarily think that they were all that distinct or unique, but for some reason, accompanied by that score and the color scheme and just the style of trailer that this was, with all the animations and like the 2D stuff. I love this. This is definitely like the best trailer of the showcase, because it's just a good trailer.
I agree. It's called Deja Vu if people want to check it out. The one thing, though, before I kick it over to you, Dustin, that I was confused about was people are still reporting this game as being out in May 21st, I think, if I have it here. But I was just scrolling through the trailer. Like, they never said the date in the trailer. Am I crazy? Like, I don't... So I was like, did the game get delayed or something? And they're not saying that yet, because I feel like you would definitely want to slap a really vibrant date on it. But I was just scrolling through the trailer and I don't see it. So
yeah,
but I think it does look great. What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah, they did. I mean, I know they did push it back, and then I was trying to find a PlayStation blog post about where they said that May date. But it is odd that they wouldn't have put that in the trailer.
Yeah, so there might be something there. I don't know.
But yeah, I first of all, I have to say, I love that at about, let's see, it's at 1 minute and 10 seconds in the trailer. There's like this really clear reference to the movie Vertigo, the poster for Vertigo, which is like this iconic, amazing movie poster for, of course, the classic Alfred Hitchcock movie, Vertigo. So that was cool. And it's just like layers on layers of reference of like Chris was saying, a 60s Bond style movie. But as far as the Dishonored connection, I love it. And what I'm hoping is, I mean, it's clear there's a lot of Dishonored DNA. It literally has the same move, the blink move. But I'm wondering if they're thinking like, okay, Dishonored has it, hardcore fans that love it, but we weren't able to capture a mainstream audience. Let's take what we learned and maybe make it more accessible to people. And you can see that in the trailer. There's a lot of gunfights and stuff. Like, usually if you in Dishonored, like if your last option will be to fight people head on. So I like that they're taking what they've done and trying it in a new way.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. I'm excited about it. And probably coming right off of Returnal. Comes out May 21st. Returnal April 30th. So we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be very good.
Yeah.
Stop throwing money in the garbage. I mean, not literally. Hopefully you're not literally throwing money in the garbage, but figuratively. Stop wasting cash on bloated, expensive wireless plans by joining up with Mint Mobile. The shocking news, my friends, is that Mint Mobile's plans start at $15 a month, which seems virtually unimaginable. But it's true, very true, and Mint Mobile isn't some shadowy organization with questionable infrastructure. Quite the opposite, in fact. Mint Mobile plans provide users with unlimited talk and text and data galore via the nation's largest 5G network. I think Mint Mobile is a great way for you to save money on your phone bill, which you can then spend on video games, because why not let it burn a hole in your pocket? So how do they keep their prices so low? They're a modern company, of course. You won't see a Mint Mobile store in your local strip mall. They run their entire operation online. That keeps overhead way lower than its competitors, and that savings is passed along to you. Oh, and forget about the headaches. You'll dodge those with ease. You can keep your phone you're using right now when you make the switch, and you can keep your number too. And they even offer a 7-day, 100% money-back guarantee. So if you don't like Mint Mobile, you've got time to change your mind. But I suspect you won't, because Mint Mobile savings are just that steep. So make the switch and get your new wireless plan starting at just $15 a month, with all you need to make the switch shipped directly to your door free of charge. by going to mintmobile.com/sacred. That's mintmobile.com/SACRED. Again, cut your wireless bill to an astounding $15 a month by heading to mintmobile.com/sacred. That's mintmobile.com/sacred. And then Final Fantasy VII was the game that ended this. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. So I don't know what's with the name, but so let me back up. The game is getting its PS5 version with all the accoutrements that we're used to at this point. But there's also the PS5 version is also getting a piece of exclusive DLC to that version of the game. So the PS4 version will not have it, as far as I understand. The PS5 version will have this Yuffie from Final Fantasy VII centric piece of DLC, like an expansion chapter for her. And of course, she is the ninja star wielding optional party member from Final Fantasy VII and is the next natural party member that in the game you would meet. So I'm actually very intrigued if they're going to try to bridge now the games together. And the reason that it's only going to be on PS5 is because the Remake 2 will only be on PS5. And so these things will all be kind of more linearly connected. So the Intergrade thing is, I guess, the full package. If you own Final Fantasy VII on PS4, you can upgrade to PS5 for free, but then you still have to buy the DLC, just like everyone else. So the DLC being exclusive to the version doesn't really make a difference because you still don't have to buy the game again. I'm excited about this. I think it looks cool. Dustin, what do you think?
I'm excited. Yeah, I think that it's weird because initially, if you would have asked me before I saw this trailer if I wanted DLC, I would have thought, like, I don't really know what they could do for DLC, but they clearly showed us that there is this, this option of doing this Yuffie DLC, and I think that's great. So I'm excited to play that for sure. I think that playing the game at 60 FPS, as we've talked about many times on the show, is going to make a huge difference and make the game feel awesome. And I have to say, the best part of this trailer is when it just came up on screen. It said graphics on PlayStation 5 for like a second or two, just graphics. So
I love Square.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's cool. I saw that they're releasing the disc they're releasing a PS5 version on disc for $70. So the question is, should people buy Remake now on sale and then just buy the DLC when it comes out? We don't know how much it's going to cost. But
yeah, that's a good thought. I mean, yeah, maybe wait, but that's a pretty good thought, because I know that there are a couple other games people have been manipulating that way, but that's the way it goes. If you're letting people kind of cross the streams both ways. Chris, what make you of Intergrade?
Yeah, it's all right. I'm glad that we're getting 60 frames in 4K. That was what I was waiting for before I went back into Final Fantasy VII. So now it's nice to have an excuse to jump back in without suffering the unbearable 30 frames per second.
I can't stand it.
Off in the past. Especially now with that Rick Astley video, everything's got to be 60 frames 4K now.
Hell yeah, dude.
But no, I think it's cool. I don't know anything about Yuffie. I have no idea. But I think it's a good sign that we're getting content for it. Because that shows that there's at least a decent amount of progress being made on presumably whatever Remake 2 is going to be called. They're probably going to have some ridiculous name for it. Now, the fact that they call this Intergrade, it's like, all right, so Final Fantasy Remake 2 is going to be like, it's going to have some Kingdom Hearts-ass name, I guarantee you, but it's good. It's a good sign that they're working on stuff for this, because it means that they've gotten some idea of how they're going to get this next one out, because it would be a real dick move to put this DLC out and not follow it up with like a proper sequel.
Yeah, I think you're right, just in the sense of it's a good sign that the work is ongoing. And I was just really quite delighted to see Yuffie, because you were really butting up to the point in the game where you would have run into her. So it's a very logical way to conclude, or to continue rather, and seamlessly get her into the next one. So I'm excited about it. Comes out June 10th, so it's pretty soon. They actually dated it, and that's pretty exciting. So if you waited and didn't play it on PS4, then you can play it on PS5 when it comes out. So that's everything that they showed. I just wanted to ask you guys now 2 questions. I mean, the first thing is, and we can go to you first, Chris, is what do you make of the overall showcase, the quality of the showcase today?
It's kind of not good, honestly. Like overall, like I and that might sound confusing because I'm sure like how we talked about everything was mostly positive. You know, like I think Solar Ash looks cool. I'm like interested to play it. Deathloop had an amazing trailer. Final Fantasy VII at 60 frames. I'm not going to complain about that. But I just think overall as a show, it's like I don't know, like these things are beginning to feel less and less necessary as I see them, and I'm just like these could have just been just put out a trailer, man.
Yeah,
just put out a trailer because I get like Solar Ash would benefit, but Returnal's, you know, that's a Sony game. Like that's something that they're focusing on. You know, Returnal's gonna have attention on it if they just put out a trailer for Returnal. People are gonna pick up that story. Deathloop is a Bethesda title. Final Fantasy VII is Final Fantasy VII. You know, it seemed like this particular state of play was all, it seems like it only exists to kind of like boost the attention for Solar Ash, really, you know, because I feel like every other game would have had, if they just uploaded a trailer individually, it would have gone through the media circuit naturally and people would have found it and people would have been like, oh man, oh wow, cool. That's not to say that's not like a reasonable strategy. I think it's cool for Solar Ash. I don't think that's a bad game. I think it could use the attention, but I don't know if it's worth sitting for 40, 50 minutes just waiting for something to happen, and then it just culminates in, ultimately, let's be real, Final Fantasy at 60 frames.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right in the sense that it seems like they're leveraging some titles to just get your eyes and passing on others, which is fine, but it's so overt, you know.
There's too many of these, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like I've sat through so many of these now that I don't even know what fucking year I'm in sometimes. Like I feel like I've experienced 9 or like 15 E3s since the last one, and it's only been like a year, 2 years. And this is kind of why, man. This is kind of why I've been beating this drum for a while, but like I just want that one day back where we could just all look forward to something. And everybody's going to bring their A game, and sometimes companies are going to fail, sometimes they're not. But at least there's just no confusion. At least we just know, like, that's the block of time to pay attention. And then the rest of the year is looking forward to just stuff coming out and playing things. I don't need to see an Oddworld trailer for the 900th time. Like, I love Oddworld. I was happy, delighted to see Oddworld. It was probably aside from Deathloop, it was like my favorite thing there, but I've seen this. Like, I know you have my money already, Lauren. Like, you got me. Like, the second you were like, I'm making this, I was like, good, I'll pay you.
Now be gone.
Yeah, just, I don't know, man. I miss E3 more and more, and I know that it's got its own problems, and it had its own issues, and like there's the whole cringe factor of it that was, in my opinion, a lot of fun also. But I just miss that one day.
Dustin, what are your thoughts on state of play right now?
I don't want to think too deeply about this, but let's think a little deeply. There's a theory in a class that I learned many years ago that the medium is the message. And the idea is that the medium in which you present a message sometimes can be as important as the message itself. I think that there's a disconnect going on, not just with state of play, but in the industry, that the consumers see the medium, a live presentation. It tells them, hey, this news is so important that you want to know as soon as possible because we're putting on a presentation. We're not just putting it passively out for you to go click. I guess it's still passive because you can choose whether or not you want to watch the live stream. Mm-hmm. So, as I was saying, there seems to be some kind of disconnect because when they put out the message in the medium of this live stream, that gives us, the consumers, an expectation of what we've seen in the past. And over again in this past year, that hasn't been the case, where we're over and over like, why were we invited to this presentation for nothing? Or not nothing, but for this. That's what I should say. Right? So I guess I'm curious at what is the point where either publishers and, you know, console makers, whatever, realize this, because I feel like it's pretty obvious to us But again, maybe it's a null point just because it's PlayStation and people are always going to tune in, even if they put out every state of play that's like this over and over. They're just going to tune in because it's PlayStation, right? So I don't know.
I think you guys both said it very well. I think the weirdest thing to me was the lack of first party games. They described this as a way to see more about the games that are coming to PS4 and PS5 this year. So I didn't expect to see Gran Turismo or anything like that. And in fact, you can kind of see that they positioned Jim Ryan's interviews to kind of get the news out that Gran Turismo was delayed, so you wouldn't expect it here and all of that. So it seemed like they were kind of trying to line up their ducks in a row. But I'm looking at the list of games here in the corner of my eye, and just think about how different this would have been with a cadence. Is if you just got rid of Crash 4 and put Ratchet there, right? And then you just got rid of like Five Nights at Freddy's and put Horizon there. And then think about just the total different tenor of the show.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know why they didn't show those games. Of course you want to see more and more of them. Of course we want to see dev diaries and extensive gameplay of them, but Ratchet and Clank's not that far away, and I do want to see more of it. And we've not seen anything of Horizon yet. Those are the kinds of tent poles that you need to frame state of plays around. And until they start doing that, we're always going to watch them and report on them for our show, but there's no reason to be excited about these. I don't think that they're necessarily bad. I just think that they're overtly markety, and I know that that's the point at the end of the day, but there's much better ways and much cleaner ways to do it, and to balance your portfolio in such a way that you celebrate both the games you make internally and the games that come from your partners, and not being so, like, whoever's signing these deals needs to like be brought into an office and be like, what are you doing? Why are we showing Crash Bandicoot again? You know, like why did you guys sign a deal for us to show Five Nights at Freddy's again?
At first, I thought it was going to be more Crash Bandicoot. Like, I thought it was going to be like a new, like maybe not like a brand new Crash Bandicoot game, but I thought they were going to like add content to it, you know? Like, I thought it was going to be like, oh, here's like a DLC pack for Crash 4. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's good, actually. It's not bad. Like, more content. That's nice. But it was just like, oh, hey, 50, 60 frames. It's like,
well, okay,
we knew that.
Chris, you would assume that, right? I mean, because they opened it with it.
Yeah, that's
so
the thing.
So you would think
that
you wouldn't open with the game that you just wrote a PlayStation blog post about last week.
I think I really do think it's all in the expectation. I think Dustin said it best. I think just the fact that we've been watching live events for video games for a long time, and what we expect out of those is what we expect out of E3, which is like the big bombastic showcase where there will be a big showing for first party, like regardless, like even if they don't have anything, they show something. And I don't know, I feel like just I'm never going, I feel like they could have the best state of play ever, and I would probably still leave kind of being a little bit underwhelmed, just because it's like, look, man, I've been over this a million times, but like E3 used to be like a big thing for me. Like, I used to get like, all my friends would come over to my house. I would get like pizza and sodas and chips and garbage, and we would sit and we would watch the conferences. We would like poke fun at like some of the cringier speakers. We would get excited for stuff, and then like we had Xbox friends who would get excited, and then like their show was over, and then PlayStation would come, and they was like, there was like some friendly banter about like, that game looks like shit or whatever the fuck. It's like, nah, fuck you, and people would get excited about it, and it was like a day. It was like a thing to look forward to. And now it's like, I'm not going to have anybody over to watch a state of play if this is the kind of, you know, I'm not going to do that anyway, because it's just a bunch of trailers in a slideshow ultimately. But I do think our expectations of previous E3s and the way that we've done this is maybe it's made us unappreciative of this new style. But even back when Nintendo was doing this for the first time and they were doing the directs before anybody else was, I remember being like, this is just not, I'm not paying attention to this. Like, I'm just not. Like, I'll tune in, but like, I'll forget everything. I already forgot about the Nintendo Direct. You know?
Yeah.
I don't remember a damn thing.
You would think you would want it to be less ephemeral because it's so important for these things to stick in people's minds. So I don't know how you can do one of these without showing any first party games. And people can say like, oh, Returnal's in there, and they treat their second party games like their first party games. They're not the same. They don't treat them the same. It's not true. They're cheaper. They don't have as much riding on them, and they're not as important to their ecosystem. You need to. I'm sorry, PlayStation 5 doesn't have that many games announced for it. You need to show more. It just. You got to be better.
Right,
guys,
now.
I just wanted to say real quick, this has the very rare third-party exclusive in this run of games that they showed us in the form of Deathloop, which are almost unheard of today. And not even a first-party game in it. Sorry, Chris, what were you going to say?
No, I mean, I think I was about to say that, actually.
No, sorry.
Yeah, no.
It's just weird, right? Like, it's like they even, that's
weird.
like pulling a four-leaf clover. Those games don't exist anymore. And yet they're like, here, not only do we have one of them, we have two of them, although they didn't show both of them. I'm starting to wonder if Ghostwire Tokyo is actually not going to be because of the Bethesda deal. I will throw out here as we wrap up and kick it to the other 2.5 hours we've recorded. I will say that I am starting to theorize in my mind that Bethesda and Sony are starting to make deals behind the scenes about the way they can work together, and maybe I feel like Tango might be relinquishing that game as an exclusive in return for something or whatever. I feel like those kinds of deals need to be struck behind the scenes, and I think that everyone would be open to hearing those things. So maybe that has something to do with the lack of Deathloop release date as well. Although I still am seeing it reported as May 21st. So
I don't know.
Only on PS5 and PC for now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it. That's all we have for this episode. Only kidding. We have 2.5 more hours we recorded, and we're going to segue into it, I'm sure, seamlessly right now. So
very.
Dustin, do your thing. Okay, so I'm not going to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. This show is so chock full of information that we're actually recording from this point first. So we've played a little bit of a trick on you, in fact. We're recording from this point forward, and then we're going to go back in time and do the state of play stuff, which hasn't happened yet at the time of we're recording this. So I just didn't want to be, it's a little disingenuous for me to be like, hey boys, all right, number 2. I just didn't want to do that. So we'll leave all the niceties for later, which has actually already happened for everyone else. All right, here's a big piece of news that there's actually, by the way, apart from the state of play stuff, probably 3 or 4 big pieces of news that would have been the highlight of a show otherwise.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to work through here. And this piece of news just broke right when we were about to start working and recording here. So number 2, it appears the wave of notable exits from Sony-owned Japan studio in recent months haven't been coincidental. According to a report on website Video Games Chronicle, I should say. By the way, shout out to these guys, because these guys are getting scoops left and right.
Yeah.
The development resources at the studio are largely being released with contracts gone unrenewed. The only exception, according to this report, in Japan Studios is a Japan Studios internal team, Asobi, which is responsible for the Astrobot games. You'll recall that Keiichiro Toyama, widely considered amongst the top talent at the studio for years, who worked on Silent Hill at Konami and created both the Siren and Gravity Rush series, recently left to begin his own studio, taking some of his team with him. Masaki Yamagiwa, who produced Bloodborne, has also left. That happened yesterday. And last year, you'll recall that Teruyuki Toriyama, the producer of Demon's Souls Remake and many other games, also left. The reason for the closure, apparently, is that Japan Studios simply isn't carrying its weight, with Sony's American and European studios absolutely trouncing it when it comes to internal game development, sales of those games, and critical reception of those games. Japan Studio is technically older than PlayStation itself. It was founded in 1993, a year before PS1 came out, and is responsible for well over 100 games in both a production and internal development capacity. The likes of Ape Escape, Parappa the Rapper, Everybody's Golf, and so much more came out of it, including the Team Ico games and others, and it helped bring to market externally developed series from Wild Arms, Wild Arms, Demon's Souls, and others as well. So this is shocking. Although it's unclear what's really happening, because Sony hasn't spoken about it yet themselves. They've been giving a lot of lip service if you read a lot of these Jim Ryan interviews, which we talked about earlier, although technically we haven't talked about them yet to each other. He talks a lot about how important Japan is, and you can see that they're setting the seeds for this, and that this is, if you go back and kind of read the tea leaves through Q4 of last year, you'll realize that this has been set up for a while. It's ironic that Asobi is responsible for what I would still consider maybe PS5's best game in the pack-in, the bundle-in Astrobot game. So they're sticking around, and I've been to Japan Studio. It's huge. It's a huge place. I think it's like 15 plus stories. There's a ton of people there. there's so many people there that don't make games, and it's kind of where PlayStation still works out of, as far as I understand, in Japan. So I don't know who's going where. And it sounds like Asobi is absorbing some of the people as well, so they're going to grow. But the whole XDev initiative that worked out of there, if you go and look at Japan Studios games, they've published or worked on a shit ton of games that people know. And so I'm shocked and saddened by this, Chris. I'm wondering what you think about they're not closing, but it seems like they're being scaled back substantially.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great news. I think it'd be a lot, obviously, sadder if this was just a straight up, just like, oh, you're going the way of pandemic. But I think it's just kind of sad to just see like because I loved a lot of these Japan Studios games. Like obviously, like Ape Escape is like huge for me, and Parappa the Rapper is like an iconic thing. And I'm getting a
Shadow of the
call.
Colossus. It came out of there.
Love it. I'm getting a phone call right now.
Oh,
that's wonderful.
Like a phone, like
I have to like close the.
This is unprecedented.
My mom.
You can answer it.
Answer it.
Yeah.
Hey, Mom, I'm recording. Okay.
Man, how dare she?
Oh God, the nerve of some people.
How dare she? Well, I was saying before the phone rang. Also, Shadow of the Colossus came out of there from Team Ico, was incubated there. But remember, and this is the thing. Like The Last Guardian also came out of there, and there's been a lot of fucked up. Like they've been given so much rope compared to other studios. I think that's been clear. I think Polyphony is similar. We'll talk about them in a little while. When you have Naughty Dog or Sucker Punch or whatever, just cranking out and then cranking out also these games, it's hard to kind of stand them up there. And it seems like XDev is just kind of not as important to them anymore. So, Dustin, do you have any thoughts on Japan Studios' truncation?
Yeah, and maybe some of this you can fill me and the audience in, just because I'm looking at their list of titles, right, from specifically the PS4 generation. They only developed 3 games that weren't in partnership with another entity or whatever. Knack 2, and Loco Roco 2 Remastered. So is that internal team is what's being scaled back from what it seems like? Or, because like what was their development partnership on Demon Souls, the remake, or on Everybody's Golf VR, which they developed with Clap Hands, which Clap Hands is an internal team. So it just seems like a really unique structuring of the studio.
Yeah, they had like a bunch of things like PlayStation Camp worked out of there for a while, and others like these guys that, the guys that made Rain and Tokyo Jungle, and there's like a lot of strange stuff coming out of there. Yeah, they've been like fast and loose with the way they structure their teams. Team Ico, for instance, there's almost no example of this anywhere else in Sony's studios, where there's like, the studio structure and then the studio, and then underneath it is like other studios. It's not just like there's Team 1, Team 2, Team 3. They're all their own independent things. So you had brought up Clap Hands, which I think is a great example. But yeah, they had a lot of, they worked with Pyramid, which I think was also internal on Patapon, and Puppeteer was an internally developed game as well. So there's more than that. And they made that horrible like Kung Fu Riders game for PlayStation Move and stuff. But yeah, it's mostly in partnership with other studios, whether it's Level 5 or Acquire, Chunsoft, whatever. So that whole structure is pretty nebulous, and I don't know that it's as nebulous as it seems. I just think that there's a language barrier, and I can say that even at the time I've spent at that studio, it's quite overwhelming. I didn't even know, and since there is a language barrier, you can't read the signs, you don't really know what's going on, and so it's strange. It's a strange move, and I wonder what it means. And I wonder what it means. It's disappointing because I feel like Japan is kind of coming back. They're roaring back. And in the console space, and PlayStation just seems kind of not willing to take advantage of that. I mean, look at all of the great games that are coming out of Capcom and Square Enix and other places. You would think that they would be eager to incorporate these people, but it seems like the studio is essentially shut down, but they're not going to shut it down because it's so old. Although technically Sony Liverpool was older, but that was because they were not Sony Liverpool originally. Anyway. And Naughty Dog's older, actually, too. Naughty Dog was founded in 1984. So, I don't know. I would say RIP, but we don't really know. I don't think it's RIP. They would be foolish to let Asobi go. And yeah, so we'll see. But it puts a lot of what's been going on over there and the exits out of there in context. And I feel like a lot of it's been reported between the lines. I feel like a lot of people knew this was happening. I certainly don't have those connections in Sony Japan, so I wouldn't know. So we'll have more on that. Hopefully Sony says something soon. It's kind of unfortunate for them that happened. We're recording this, and that news broke in the hours before State of Play. So we'll see if any of the ex-dev games from Japan Studio were there, and then maybe that will tell us a story. All right, here's another piece of news that would have been a massive piece of news, given in Sony form. Number 3, in a surprise post on the official PlayStation blog, Sony has officially discussed the next generation of PlayStation VR in some detail for the very first time. In the past, Sony has cursorily referenced it, and it has long been reported to exist via mostly Japanese reporters. I think Wall Street Journal in Japan often reports on it. In the post, Hideki Nishino, an SVP at PlayStation, says in part that he's, quote, pleased to share that our next generation VR system will be coming to PlayStation 5, enabling the ultimate entertainment experience with dramatic leaps in performance and interactivity. Players will feel an even greater sense of presence and become even more immersed in their game worlds once they put on the new headset, end quote. While the device isn't named, we'll call it PSVR 2 around here until it is named. Nishino did share some key details. Perhaps the most important is that the device will be tethered to PS5 by a single cord, both dashing the hopes of those who wanted a wireless headset while pleasing both potential and actual PSVR consumers by reducing a substantial amount of clutter. But there's more. Quote, one of the innovations we're excited about is our new VR controller, which will incorporate some of the key features found in DualSense wireless controller along with a focus on great ergonomics, end quote. In other words, we're about to say goodbye to PlayStation Move, the stubborn technology which first launched on PlayStation 3 in 2010. But don't get too excited. It's not coming out in 2021. Sony merely, quote, wanted to provide this early update to our fans as the development community has started to work on creating new worlds for you to explore in virtual reality, end quote. The original PSVR, launched for PlayStation 4 in October of 2016, is the best-selling virtual reality device of all time. Sony last confirmed the headset sales at 5 million at the end of 2019. It's likely in the 6+ million range now. It's worth noting that's far in excess of its competitors. So I want to say at the top, why do they talk about it? It's because it's going out. They say it's going out to teams. It's going to leak. So they want to get ahead of the game and let everyone know that it's coming. But Chris, what do you think about what they've told us? I mean, I think the three key pieces is no 2021, one wire, new controller.
Yeah, I mean that's I think all good news. I think hopefully, Jesus Christ, hopefully by 2022 we've got this whole situation sorted. But so that gives some time for people to reacclimate to the world as usual, and hopefully by then they'll be able to manufacture these things without like hardcore supply constraints. It's a nice window of time between the launch of the PS5 and the launch of this next generation VR thing. I think that's about. I could be wrong, but I think I said like 2022 would be around the time that we would see it. So I feel pretty good about that. But the big thing to me is like, it's not even the wires to me, like whatever. The wires are like arbitrary. It's like VR is kind of cumbersome and tedious unless you have like a Quest anyway. Like it's kind of accepted that that's going to be a thing. But the new controller is a big deal to me because the PlayStation Move sucks. It's so old. It's, what is it, 2010, 2011?
Yeah, 2010. Yeah, 2010. It's September 2010, if I recall.
Yeah, it's ancient, and it feels ancient, especially when paired with the PSVR, which, 2016 to 2010 isn't necessarily that long of a time, but it feels like a really, really long time when you're holding and operating these pieces of technology that are from completely different eras that are just like working in tandem. Hopefully they can get something, maybe not exactly like the Valve Index, but maybe something along the lines of the Vive or something that's a little bit more robust and a little bit more friendly for some of the more innovative things that VR is capable of now, and some of the stuff that a lot of devs are trying to do now that base VR has been around for a while now. It's kind of weird to think about how long virtual reality as a concept has been like in consumers' hands. It's been a while.
Yeah. I think I first was exposed to Oculus at E3 in maybe 2012 or 2013 because I played Valkyrie. That was the first game I played on VR, and I was completely blown away by it. I'll never forget it just because I was like, I can't believe how cool this is. But then I never even played it when it came to PSVR.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, the new controller is huge to me. That's the big takeaway from this.
Well, I like that news too, just because I'm PSVR is fine. I like the weight of it and stuff, but it is old. I mean, it's so old that it's charged with like, 2 USB cables ago. It's just like very inconvenient, and asking people to have all these wires and stuff. It's just inelegant. The PS Move, I think, was a little underrated because it's so much better than the Wiimote. But by the time it came out, it didn't matter because no one gave a fuck about the Wiimote in 2010 and what it could do or couldn't do. Because remember the Wii Motion Plus, where we like added that weird thing to the bottom of the Wii and the Wiimote, and so they were trying to play in that space. And the same guy that made Richard Marx is his name, not the singer, but he's actually like an engineer at Sony. He created Move and VR. And so, or for PlayStation. So I imagine he's behind this new controller. What I thought was interesting in the verbiage about it was they were talking about ergonomics and all of that. And I picture what would be one of the many patents that Sony has filed in recent years, which is a controller that pulls apart and gets put back together, which I think would be pretty cool. Dustin, what do you make about what little Sony has said about PSVR 2?
I think it's really exciting because Sony, while they weren't the first VR headset, they definitely were the first ones to make it accessible to the mainstream, right? Like obviously was Oculus, but you needed a high-end PC for that. And I also believe that it was more expensive initially, but so it's exciting just because the PSVR, while maybe wasn't to the quality of some of those other headsets, was innovative in a lot of ways, especially I would say in the comfort department and how they design the headset. You now see Oculus, the latest version of the Rift, actually kind of copied the PlayStation VR design. So, and I think that some of the, we talked about the one cable, and I think that's just the start of some of the conveniences. I really think that this is going to have inside out tracking, which is currently what the Quest and the latest Oculus use. So basically that means no more PlayStation camera requirement. There will be like infrared sensors on the headset itself and on the controllers. That's just going to make it like way, way easier and simpler to use, and will be a lot more accurate. That's one of the biggest things. Like as soon as you turn around in the PlayStation VR, it just like has no clue what's happening. But I guess the question I had for you guys thinking about this, because a lot of people have asked me this, whether it's in Discord or on Twitch, is asking about the price point, right? Because PlayStation VR launched, you got the 2 Move controllers, the camera, and the headset. I think there was 2 different bundles, but the main bundle was $500 when it came out. And now VR is in a completely different landscape where you can get a Quest 2 for $300, I believe, for the lower gigabyte version. And it's an all-in-one. You do not need a console. You don't need a PC. It's all just in the headset. And then you can plug it into, it works with a PC if you wanted to. So that's a huge value proposition. So to me, it seems like Sony needs to take that into account when they price this thing. I just don't know if they're getting away with $500 or maybe even $400 on this one.
Yeah, it's a good point. The VR unit was the same price as the console when it came out, which everyone was flabbergasted by. Yeah. Well, yeah, but I think it was $400. One bundle was $400, but I think it was confusing too because we got a bunch of stuff for free. So I didn't know. Kind of funny at the time. I didn't know like what was what, but I remember them being at least equivalent in price, and it was it's too expensive. But at the same time, I feel like, Kristen, I wonder what you think about this. I was kind of surprised by some people being upset about this idea of it still being tethered. To me, I was like, well, have you ever played a PSVR? Like, it's a fucking nightmare. There's the processing box, and there's cords coming out of every end of it, and the camera's hooked up. And I was like, this seems great to me. It seems like it would drop the price of it substantially by doing that. And I also feel like it allows it to more actively work off the power of the PS5, therefore future-proofing it. So to me, when I saw the wire, I was like, this is great news. I don't want it to be wireless because I don't know that that's the smartest thing. Although what Dustin's saying is that you could potentially have the best of both worlds. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's smart to work off of the power of the PlayStation 5 with the cable. I think that's there's no way Sony is going to manufacture a wireless VR unit that is powerful enough to satisfy the VR market while also being cheaper than the Quest. Like, I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So I think the best way to do something like this is like, yeah, you have something that's light and, just not cumbersome, but also has the benefit of working off of current gen, like proper, like really powerful hardware. And, I still do think the biggest barrier for VR is the cable. I do think that is because I have a Vive right now that I never use because I just know I feel this wire going down my back, and it's just kind of like, unless I'm like really in the mood for it, it's something that I'm going to forego. But if I had like a Quest lying around, I'd probably use that every day, just because of the convenience of it. So I understand like the desire for wireless VR, because I think that's where we all want to end up eventually. But I think for right now, and even in 2022, I think it's probably even better to kind of focus on relying on the PS5's power, because the PS5 is a powerful machine, and why not use that power base to maybe even go in at a lower price point than some other top of the line wireless VR headsets that are definitely going to be vying for people's attention.
Yeah, the thing looks like a Cylon base star, so hopefully it has the power of one as well that they can grab stuff off of. But we actually got a question here from Joseph Barker that kind of builds on this, Chris. Let me just bounce it right back to you, because he says, hey, Colin, Chris, and maybe Dustin. He's here, Big D. With Sony confirming this week a new VR headset in development for PS5, what improvements on the current headset would you like to see? So Dustin already said this idea of, I think I scared him when I said his name, he said that, this idea of a cameraless kind of situation with infrared tracking and all of that, which I think sounds glorious. It sounds expensive, but it certainly sounds glorious. What would you like to see that we have? So we have the new controller, we have the tether. What is there something about VR that you would really like to see incorporated in this thing? Because I can answer it for you and say, like, they need to continue to support it as much as they've been supporting it now, because the hardware sounds great, but I have to give it up to Sony. They have supported PSVR. They've definitely kept releasing games for it. I mean, first party games, second party games, third party timed exclusives. That's got to keep coming. I think that's the big thing. It remains about the product.
I think what I'm going to want to see is, if you're going to have this unit that is going to be kind of for sale within your own kind of console ecosystem, because this isn't like a competing console, but it is like its own console in a way. Even if it does need the PS5 to function. And I would hope that, in the same way that IO Interactive kind of used Hitman 3 as kind of this weird vehicle to kind of like, hey, guess what? Hitman 3 exists and it's a great game, but if you want to play it in VR, you can do that now, and isn't that cool? I think it would be smart of Sony to like devote some amount of resources, either not even necessarily in the dev studios themselves at like Guerrilla or Insomniac themselves, but like maybe an extra team that kind of like goes in and kind of goes like, all right, well, what can we do in the VR space with this title that will entice people to maybe try this out? Because I think that's the biggest problem with VR right now, is just the lack of AAA. And you're probably never going to get a pure, or at least not for a long time, you're probably not going to get a pure VR like exclusive AAA game. I mean, it took us ages to get Half-Life Alyx, and even that was only possible because of the unique situation that Valve is in. So the compromise that I would say is just like, hey, you know what? When the next Uncharted comes out, have a solid Uncharted game, but also like maybe like a VR missions type deal with Uncharted, or something like Killzone with like a VR horde mode or something. Just something experimental within the first party that you can kind of point to and be like, if I get a PSVR 2, I'm not getting it just for the games. I'm getting it to enhance the games that I'm already looking forward to.
Yeah, that's very well said. I tend to agree. I feel like it's hard to at 6 million sold, it's hard to say like we're going to take one of our AAA studios that's, think about Horizon sold like 10 or 12 million units. It's like you can't, there's twice as few, or 2 times. What am I trying to say here? Half as much, half as much VR units out there as there is copies sold of Horizon. And I find that so fascinating. But at the same time, they dedicate Sony London and some others to VR projects and Japan Studio, although it didn't bode very well for them. But we did hear that rumor recently, and we said it on the show. I certainly heard it. I don't know if it's been reported anywhere that Sony London seems to be changing too, internally. And if that's true, they're the other big external development, production, and some internal development studio. The guys that did like SingStar and stuff like that, and most recently Blood and Truth on VR. So it seems like maybe the VR unit was the death knell for some of them. Yes, PSVR was the death knell for Cambridge and others. So we'll see what happens. I'm interested in this. I will say this though, that the news of this makes it pretty certain that I'm just not going to even bother with VR now until the new one comes out, because now that I know that there's this elegant solution in the works, I'm like, well, I'm definitely not putting that thing back in the fucking garbage bin, So Andrew Arana wrote in. This doesn't belong in the garbage bin. I love PSVR. Andrew Arana wrote in though, and he does have an interesting question, more about the marketing. He's saying, "Hey guys, Andrew here. I see that, Andrew, because I said your name. I'm sure you'll be talking about this already, but I have to know why Sony made the lackluster announcement of PSVR 2. Is this saying it's a niche product, or is it them giving up before it's even out? As always, I love the content and will continue to support Chris's Snapple addiction." Well, we appreciate that. So at the top, I said, the reason I think that they're saying this, and just to reiterate, is because they say in the story, the dev kits are out, so now it's going to leak. And if it leaks, they'll at least have the initiative. But I will say this, I read an interesting point, and I wonder what you think of this, Dustin. I read a point that Sony saying this, because my first instinct was like, oh my God, like this fucking ugly, barren blog post. There's no images in it. It's like written by some dude you never heard of, or written in quotes by some dude you never heard of. But then someone said Sony sold 6 million units of a piece of hardware, probably lost a lot of money on it, and is making another one. And they're doing this at a time when they're cutting their studio resources back. And they're making very deliberate decisions. I really think Sony obviously we know this, but Sony believes in VR. And I still say what I said in 2015 and 2016. I still think it's a really smart bet. And I still think the future of PlayStation's VR initiative is going to be a standalone unit that Sony will have that will allow you to do many other things. I think PlayStation is still the proving ground. So Dustin, do you think that them saying this is a sign of weakness, or is it a sign of strength? Because I think it's a sign of some confidence, actually.
No, I don't think it's a sign of weakness at all. I think it clearly comes to the point that, as you said, the dev kits are going out and they know that stuff is going to start leaking. But I mean, Sony, from observing, the VR industry, as it's kind of blossomed into what it is now, I feel like they are in such a unique position, especially right now. Like the Oculus Quest 2 is like a surprisingly really successful product. It is priced so well at $300. There's tons of compelling software for it. And I feel like, Sony has that and more, right? Because they have that cachet of their first party lineup. Chris was talking about like some kind of Uncharted VR thing. And I think I said this last week, is that Sony, they had a lot of great first party support with PSVR, but they never fully put their money where their mouth is. So if they can get this product out and have it be a compelling price point that is comparable with the Quest 2 and have a killer lineup of first party IP attached, this really could be like the big breakout moment for VR, I think. It's all the stars aligning on this one.
That'd be awesome. I mean, it would be nice for it to come to fruition, just so we can at least see the non-gaming potential of it, which I still think is so enormous. I'll also note, we've been talking about things that we said, and I forget to bring this up, guys, but we had said just a week or two ago, there's persistent rumors that Guerrilla might be making a Horizon, or rather that a studio might be spinning off with Guerrilla's blessing, I guess, a newer studio to make a Horizon VR game. And I wouldn't be surprised if that were true. In fact, I feel like Horizon's perfect for that. If you think about it, not in the third person action, but maybe Aloy hunting dinosaurs or doing other things. Maybe it's in first person, and it's very exciting to think about the possibilities. I think they need to be brave enough although it's risky, I think they need to be brave enough to do kind of what they did with Until Dawn, which was to say, like, we're going to make an Until Dawn game, or Supermassive is going to make an Until Dawn VR game, but it's an on-rails shooter, basically. Like, that's kind of bold, and it's not a great idea. It's a very natural idea for VR, but what I'm saying, like, if it's to Chris's point, I think you guys make great points. Do something a little different with what you already have, and don't try to couple up on it, and you'll be good. And I think people are eager in the PlayStation ecosystem to support this. But I'll also note that, especially with Oculus, this is a Facebook-owned company and a Facebook-backed company, and they have enormous amounts of money, much more money to throw at this than Sony does, and it's clear that they're doing that. In fact, we'll remember that they acquired 2 Sony second-party studios in the last couple of years, in Ready at Dawn and Sanzaru. So they have a lot of competition, so that they're willing to stay here, knowing they're going to fight Valve, knowing they're going to fight Facebook for dominance, and knowing that they have a huge foothold with a console that is very popular. Worth noting that actually PS4 or PS5 seems to be outselling PS4 so far, according to Jim Ryan, which is pretty remarkable. So
yeah,
we will see. We will see indeed. So that's the second piece of non-state of play news that would have been the first story overall. Let's do another one.
Yeah.
That in a normal week would have been a number one overall. We still have a few more of them to go through.
Yeah.
This is a crazy week. It's a crazy week.
It's wild.
In fact, Dustin, I'm going to say this right now. People will know this by the time they get to this part of the episode, but I want this episode published immediately. You know how we usually hold them overnight? And every once in a while we publish it right away when it's ready? We're going to do that with this episode. It's too big to hold back.
Okay.
It's kind of like my dick.
That.
That was a little perverted, wasn't it?
A little bit.
Just surprise someone in the car with their kid. Number 4. Polyphony Digital's eagerly anticipated PS5 exclusive sim racer Gran Turismo 7 has been delayed, though its delay was announced in the strangest way possible. Buried in an interview PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan conducted with GQ, so he said, I don't know why, he said like why this was buried in there, and he says, when asked about the game, Sony's PR reps apparently stepped in and promised a statement, which they later provided. So if you read the GQ back and forth, there's no answer. The PR reps actually stepped in about Gran Turismo 7 and later gave them a statement. Here's what the statement says, quote, GT7 has been impacted by COVID-related production challenges and therefore will shift, pardon the pun, from 2021 to 2022. With the ongoing pandemic, it's a dynamic and challenging situation, and some critical aspects of game production have been slowed over the past several months. We'll share more specifics on GT7's release date when available, end quote. Gran Turismo 7, first revealed in June of 2020, is actually the 8th core entry in the series when counting 2017's GT Sport, which is on PS4. The distance between GT Sport and GT7 will mark the longest distance between entries in Gran Turismo's history, which began in 1997 on PS1. Thankfully, Ryan does seem to confirm that Horizon Forbidden West, due out later this year on both PS4 and PS5 from Guerrilla Games, is still on track, which is good news since PS5 will by that time be in fairly desperate need of a AAA exclusive. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Calvin Kirstein wrote in about this. He says, hey fellas, so a lot of people are going to write in about VR this week, but I wanted to touch on the delayed game Jim Ryan mentioned in his interview, Gran Turismo 7. Do you guys buy Ryan's claim that it's been delayed into 2022 because of COVID constraints? Or is this more of a tactical decision due to 2021 being pretty crowded with PlayStation exclusives already? To me, it at least gives the game more breathing room or space. However, it wouldn't surprise me if Kaz, and he's talking about Kazunori, the director of the game, is being his usual pedantic self and asks Sony for more time. So famously, he's incredibly slow, as we all know, and getting more and more slow as time goes on. Interesting guy, by the way. GT7, or remember, GT7 was supposed to be an early 2021 game. So that's a really good point as well. I guess there's 3 constants in life: death, taxes, and polyphony taking forever on a Gran Turismo game. Amen. Ever since the Gran Turismo 4 days, basically, on PS2, they've been taking their sweet time. Chris, what do you make of this? Because I do not agree with Calvin's insistence, although he might be right that it's crowded. I feel like they can use everything they can get right now.
Yeah.
And getting Gran Turismo out, I think, would be urgent. And he's right that they did say it was an early game. In fact, we were kind of thinking it would be out before Ratchet at some point, before the console came out. So what do you make of this delay and the way they kind of buried it?
It's a little weird, but I do think I don't think they're making like an excuse. I think it's totally reasonable that this game would be impacted by COVID related problems, because this is one of those games where, you know, devs or you know, researchers are like going out and they're flying out to places and they're like taking photos and they're flying and they're going to different racetracks and interacting with a lot of people, which is like, you know, not something that's all that doable. or at least not as convenient to do as it used to be. I totally buy that this was like a COVID related thing, and I'm sure this guy has a history of being like slow with his games, and I'm sure that just probably doesn't help. But yeah, no, I do think it's a little weird that they had this statement prepared for this interview and not. It seems like a statement they would have made independently. Like it's weird that they, you know what I mean? Like it's weird that this news came out of just like a random interview that presumably would have had very little to do with Gran Turismo. But that's the only weird thing that I can really muster out of this. I think it's totally reasonable that it was COVID related.
I tend to agree with you. I think other than now Insomniac, I think Polyphony is the only studio in Japan's or in Sony's first party that has 2 locations. So that's also difficult for them to probably coordinate between. And you're right, they're obsessive about going to these places. I mean, we joke about it on the show. That's how every Gran Turismo game leaks. If you go back in history, every Gran Turismo leaks when they see Kazunori Yamauchi at some random racetrack in Holland taking pictures of a wheel. I mean, that's like literally, and it's like, well, it must be Gran Turismo time again. And that's how it happens. So I never told this story publicly, but I'll tell it now. It's just a funny little anecdote. I've met Kazunori Yamauchi many times, but at E3 in 2013, he was there, and I was behind closed doors at Sony, and one of the PR people pulled me aside, and they're like, "Kaz has a few minutes. Do you want to talk to him?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not prepared to ask him anything specifically, but I'd love to talk to him." And I talked to him. I didn't end up publishing anything from it, and the reason I didn't was because I was afraid Sony would dispute what he absolutely said to me. And what he said to me, I asked him, "What do you think about Drive Club?" And I was talking to, which is of course Evolution's Racer, which came out of nowhere. Everyone was surprised. Like, what do you want? You have Gran Turismo. And so it went through his translator, and then he talked back to the translator like very briefly, and he's like, "We don't think about Drive Club." And I was like,
that's the Don Draper move right there.
So I ended up going to my editor, and I was like, I want to publish this, but what Sony PR is going to do, even though he definitely meant it like as a dickhead, they're going to be like, he literally meant he doesn't think about it because he's busy working on Gran Turismo. And I'm like, he definitely didn't mean it like that. So I never published it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's an awesome story.
So yeah, there's a little piece of info for you guys out there. So Dustin, what are you thinking about with this delay in terms of how it fits in with what we already know? We know we're presumably, and by the time people even hear this part of the podcast, we might have a little more information, but we assume Deathloop will be this year and hit this year, as well as Ghostwire. So we have some second party games, and then we have Ratchet coming, Returnal will come before that, and then Horizon later in the year. I won't dispute Calvin's insistence that there are a lot of games. I just think Sony needs to flood the zone right now, and therefore I think GT7 needs to come as soon as possible.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's an excuse. We don't know exactly how different COVID is handling Japan on a cultural standpoint. We do know, and maybe this is apples and oranges, but there were specific reports that Nintendo had a lot of issues when they were moving to a more COVID-friendly workflow. And again, that's Nintendo, hyper secretive. So this could be totally different, but it may be more of a Japanese thing. Maybe they're a lot more protective than we are, or
they
something
definitely
like that.
are.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's something to keep in mind. And I think that to both your guys' point, also with the hands-on nature of the development of this game, it makes sense. But so yeah, that's my thoughts overall on that. I took something else out of this statement though.
Yeah.
He said,
hit me with it.
He said, well, you were in here. Ryan does seem to confirm that Horizon Forbidden West is due out later this year. Okay. What other game?
Yeah, he doesn't confirm it. He doesn't confirm it. Yeah.
Right. But there's another game that he didn't even mention.
God of War. Breath. Yeah. Yeah, God of War, of course.
I'm just saying that, like, the writing's on the wall even more now with this interview. Like, that would have been the moment to plug it and be like, we've got, this game's delayed, but don't worry, we're on track with Horizon and God of War.
Yeah, it's
but
very
he
clear.
Didn't say one of those.
It's very obvious. Like, I knew from the second I saw it. Like, the second I saw it, I was like, that's delayed. Like, it's almost like they... It's almost like the trailer was for the delay. That's like almost how I read it. It was like, oh, that's going to be cool when it comes out eventually.
Didn't it say Ragnarok? It said Ragnarok is coming, right? That's what the thing was, or whatever.
Yeah.
It should have just said Ragnarok is delayed, and then we could have just gotten right off, right out. We don't even know what the fuck the game's called. Although, by the time you hear this, we might have already learned that in State of Play. Although you guys can hold me to this because it's going to be in the show. I don't think they're going to talk about God of War because the note says like we're focused on PS4 and PS5 games coming out soon or coming out this year, and dude, they're always setting up weird. Sony doesn't know what the hell it's doing with this stuff. It's so funny. They just stumble into greatness because they're certainly not calculated. I'm sorry. Like,
dude, knowing my luck, like at this point, the listener, like there's been a God of War trailer. There is a firm release date and they're listening to the show and they're like, wow, Dustin is a fucking idiot. It could happen. We don't know. This is such the unique situation with this modern podcasting technology.
I'm willing to put my money down. It's not coming out this year. There's no fucking chance in hell.
I don't think so either.
No, definitely not coming out this year. I'm just wondering. I don't think we're going to see any game today that's not coming out this year. So I guess that would knock Gran Turismo and God of War off, and we don't know about anything else after that. I don't think from the first party we don't know shit.
No.
So or second party. So I think yeah. Well, in hindsight, I think we'll see like Kenna. Games like Stray or whatever, and then we'll see the Bethesda games. Horizon, I think we're going to see like a big blowout for, and maybe a date, and we'll go from there. And Ratchet, I'm sure they're going to show a lot of Ratchet too, because we haven't seen like full gameplay of Ratchet yet, much of it. All right, guys, here's another story that would have been a top story for a normal episode of the show. This is number 5.
I'm excited about this one.
Anthem is officially no more. Reporting from Bloomberg indicated a couple of weeks ago that publisher Electronic Arts would indeed be rendering a verdict one way or the other on BioWare's beleaguered online shooter, and now it has, via a blog post on the developer's official website. It comes from BioWare Austin's branch creative director, Christian Bailey, and it reads in part, quote, "In the spirit of full transparency and closure, we wanted to share that we've made the difficult decision to stop our new development work on Anthem, also known as Anthem NEXT. We will, however, continue to keep Anthem Live's services running as it exists today. Since Anthem's launch, the team has been working hard to continually improve the game, releasing multiple updates that brought with them a variety of improvements and introduced new content to play. Towards the end of 2019, we expanded on that effort and started working on a more fundamental restructure of the game, ellipsis. Working from home during the pandemic has had an impact on our productivity, and not everything we had planned as a studio before COVID can be accomplished without putting undue stress on our teams. I know this will be disappointing to the community of Anthem players who have been excited to see the improvements we've been working on. It's also disappointing for the team who are doing brilliant work. Ellipsis. Game development is hard. Decisions like these are not easy. Moving forward, we need to laser focus our efforts as a studio and strengthen the next Dragon Age and Mass Effect titles while continuing to provide quality updates to Star Wars: The Old Republic," end quote. Anthem launched on PS4 in February of 2019 and almost immediately proved incapable of sustaining a player base. It received its last update 1.7 in February of 2020. Bloomberg, meanwhile, notes that BioWare's focus on Dragon Age is now entirely on single player. All multiplayer components of the game, both realized and in progress, have been completely stripped out of the upcoming RPG. All right, Chris, you said you were excited about this, so speak away about BioWare Austin's decision.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's the right decision. I think they waited too long to do this. Quite honestly, like I think I could be wrong, but I believe we talked about Anthem when it launched, and I was like playing it. For Sacred Symbols, and I remember just being, I believe I said, this is way too late to the party. This is going to die. And look, man, it sucks that people are probably, I'm sure there are some people who really like Anthem, and it sucks for those people who don't get a new game. But I'm also just selfish, and I'm just happy to be kind of vindicated. And nobody's like losing. Like they're just shuffling these teams around. It's not like anything's being like shuttered or anybody's like losing their jobs or anything. That was the case.
It doesn't sound like any reduction of headcount, which is good.
Yeah. If that was the case, I'd be really sad. That would suck. But this is just, the writing's been on the wall for Anthem for a long time. It's just not a game that really had any shot. There was nothing about it that had any potential to compete with Destiny, The Division, or any number of other, even the Avengers, man. Even the Avengers has the name, and it's about time. It's good. This is just going to strengthen the other titles that they're working on. I think so too. Less of a distraction.
I agree, and I think that even if there was intent to want to shutter the Austin studio, they couldn't for two reasons, because they, as he says, they're kind of in charge of the Old Republic, the MMO. That's like 10 years old now, by the way. And they it would have been really bad for the BioWare name for them to get rid of another studio after basically BioWare Montreal was essentially just dissolved into the ether at some point too. So I see it from that perspective, and it's too bad that the work that they're doing can't be seen. I'm just kind of curious what the numbers were behind the scenes, like how many people are really playing this game and we're anticipating. It doesn't seem like many. I mean, I think it's in the thousands. I just don't know that it's in the tens of thousands. And if you don't have even that, you can't move forward. Dustin, what did you think about EA's decision here?
No, I'm with Chris. I think they should have probably stopped this a long time ago. I mean, from the original initial report from Bloomberg, I think they said it was like 15 people were working on this, which is not enough. I mean, I don't know a lot about Anthem, but that doesn't seem like a commitment to try to fix things with that small of a team. But to me, like, BioWare is clearly, or maybe currently is, like a studio that is in some kind of turmoil, right?
Yes,
if you look at Mass Effect Andromeda, you look at the launch of Anthem, they lost some of their top talent with Casey Hudson, right? Moving on. So to me, it's like, yeah, it's time to clean house. Get rid of the projects that aren't working and move forward. You have the Mass Effect remaster coming, fantastic. Maybe that can be like the starting point of a good step forward. And then with Dragon Age, it seems like they're already starting to listen to the feedback and be like, okay, let's focus in on what made us great and get rid of anything that isn't us, which hopefully that's the case, because that seems to be the way to go.
Yes. I think it's important. I also think BioWare is it's kind of like Naughty Dog in a way, where it's kind of just a name in a sense, because it's so distant from the founders and from the founding members and who's even there anymore and all of that. So they have a chance to kind of reinvent themselves. Naughty Dog reinvented themselves and made themselves much more acclaimed than they used to be. They've been acclaimed for 25 years, but the Naughty Dog now and the Naughty Dog of the Crash or Jack era is two different teams, and doesn't necessarily have to bring you into a southward trajectory. I would really love BioWare to reinvent itself in the post Casey Hudson era. New Dragon Age, new Mass Effect. Let's forget about Andromeda. Let's forget about all these mistakes with Anthem. Like you said, Dustin, let's focus in on what makes our name great and why people are attracted to come to Edmonton or to come to Austin and work here. You got to go to Northern Alberta to make these games. You're asking a lot of people. So strip out that multiplayer. No one gives a shit.
Yeah. Jesus.
All right. Here's another top story that would have been a top story for a normal week. This is number 6. Sony has revealed the next AAA PlayStation exclusive that's come to PC, and it's the very one predicted time and time again on this show, Days Gone. Word comes by way of a brief tweet from developer Ben Studio's official account, though migrating Days Gone over was expanded upon by PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan in an interview with GQ. The article describes Ryan as noting that there's, quote, a whole slate, end quote, of games en route to PC. When pressed about why Sony is suddenly amenable to putting games on PC after many, many years of being proprietary with virtually everything he makes, he says, quote, I think a few things changed. We find ourselves now in early 2021 with our development studios and the games that they make in better shape than they've ever been before. Particularly from the latter half of the PS4 cycle, our studios made some wonderful, great games. There's an opportunity to expose those great games to a wider audience and recognize the economics of game development, which are not always straightforward. The cost of making games goes up with each cycle as the caliber of the IP has improved. Also, our ease of making it available to non-console owners has grown. So it's a fairly straightforward decision for us to make, end quote. When asked what they learned about releasing Guerrilla's Horizon Zero Dawn on PC last year, he said in part, quote, in terms of straightforward success of the activity of publishing the game on PC, people like it and they bought it. We also looked at it through the lens of what the PlayStation community thought about it. There was no massive adverse reaction to it. So we will continue to take mission steps in this direction, end quote. Days Gone first came to PS4 in early 2019. The team that made it, Bend, is a Sony-owned studio best known for its sprawling Siphon Filter series, as well as Resistance Retribution on PSP and Uncharted Golden Abyss on Vita. They're working on Days Gone 2 now. There's a lot here. First of all, I was right. I mean, I told you guys Days Gone would be next. That just seemed to be the obvious choice. That was not really me.
Yeah.
It just seemed obvious. I think, by the way, people are asking what's next. God of War's next, in case you guys want to know. I'm just throwing that out there. God of War will be next.
I said that too.
Yeah, because it's got to be, right? Horizon will be teasing Forbidden West, and then God of War will inevitably tease Ragnarok, and that's great synthesis of your resources.
No, exactly.
So, Chris, what do you think of Days Gone coming to PC? But more importantly, I think some of the things Jim Ryan expanded on, that they're going to continue to do this, and they're going to do it. They have a slate, he said, of games that they're going to release on PC. And he also said something that surprised me, but I think it was a message. He says that there was no massive adverse reaction to this. And I actually agree. If you just leave Twitter and PlayStation.com and stuff like that, no one gives a shit. Why would you care? If they're going to port these old games. We're talking about now, Days Gone's not as old, right, as Horizon. So I get it. But they wrung the water out of Days Gone a long time ago. So, Chris, talk to me about your feelings.
Yeah, no, I think it's I mean, outside of the internet, there's not going to be an adverse reaction to a lot of these things. To be quite honest, it's like everybody thinks there will be, just because there's like a big fandom around it, and any degree of change to a fandom always kind of sets people off. But the second it happens, everybody's like, I guess this is just how it is now. Whatever. People don't have the time or energy to be really angry about something so menial, like, oh, more people get to play a game that I like. It's like I think at some point you realize, even if it's not conscious, that that's a dumb thing to be angry about, and you just sort of stop feeling that way, even if you did before it happened. And I think, Days Gone is the obvious choice. I think God of War is absolutely next, because it seems like a perfect opportunity to tease. I do wonder if Spider-Man will ever. I feel like Spider-Man is one that's like the most up in the air, because I feel like why wouldn't you? Just because this is a game that sells a ridiculous amount. Even Miles Morales is like selling like crazy, and like the original Spider-Man like broke all sorts of records, and like you'd kind of wonder to yourself, like, man, we could just do that again on PC, and like what would stop you? But at the same time, Spider-Man is such a valuable IP to PlayStation that I wonder if like maybe they would be like, all right, you know what, let's make it so like people need a PS5 to play this, right? At least for a while. I think if Spider-Man ever comes to PC, it'll be the one that it'll be the game that was released on a PlayStation platform that comes to PC after the longest time.
Maybe to tease the next one, which is years away.
Maybe to tease the next one. And
possibly so.
I do wonder what this slate of games is, because really I can only think of God of War and Spider-Man. So unless there's like something, because like what game would be like a big splash, really?
I don't know PC. That they have many more big. I mean, Last of Us, which would be huge. Bloodborne would be big, but I think that would be a huge mistake, because they still have not even given 60 frames, which I think will come for the PS5 patch or whatever. So I think they have to do that first. I do think Bloodborne will come to PC, but
I think that's
Dark Souls is big on PC, isn't it? So that would be a place that you would want it. I would think
that's definitely the most likely one, and I think it's probably like, I think that will be the thing that, like, if there is a Bloodborne 2, that'll be the way that they tease it. And it's a smart. Listen, the way that, like, I like the way Xbox is doing it too, with like the day one launch. It's like really convenient for me, but I think the way that PlayStation is handling their approach to PC releases is genuinely really smart, as a way of just like advertising their next thing. I think that's a wise way to do that, because you're still getting your games out there. You're still allowing people to jump into your ecosystem without necessarily having to throw $500 down for a machine that they can't even get their hands on anyway, while also, making sure that those games drive people to your console, while making sure that they are exclusive and they have allure for a long period of time. It's really smart. I think it's a good call from Sony to finally be open to this stuff.
Yeah, I think you either let the fruits of whatever you've made wither on the vine when no one's interested in them anymore, where you usually sell them, or you bring them to another market. And I think that I get it. I mean, I understand the kind of instinctive fanboyism of like, oh, we want our games on our platform, we love it. But at the same time, it's like, if you really, taking it to its logical conclusion, if you're such a fanboy, for instance, then this makes Sony more money and makes their studios more secure. So that's good. And it's a really nice teasing mechanism to get people to buy your console. I think that if people buy Horizon and they were really into it, or they buy whatever and they're really into it, God of War in the future, this is all upside, because Sony has no more water to wring out of these sponges anymore. Dustin, what do you think about kind of the various possibilities?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I don't want to repeat what you guys said, but obviously there's so much potential in bringing in new sales, and anyone who doesn't like this, I'm sorry, it's a silly thing to think. And I don't think that's really our audience, because we constantly are critical of Sony, so those type of fanboys are probably not listening right now.
Yeah, I don't think that they like this show very much.
Right. But yeah, I just hope, I guess my main hope is that they can be more successful right out the gate with the quality of the PC port, just because Horizon specifically had a ton of issues at launch, which they have ironed out. And, it was, well, I would say it's their first go, but technically, Kojima Productions had Decima running on PC a lot better. Again, Horizon's probably a lot more complicated of a game to run on PC than, or just on another platform to move over. But yeah, I hope that they can have a stronger foot right out the gate, making sure that the PC port of this game is good. And again, I want Bloodborne very, very badly. So that's the one I'm hoping for. But I would also, I'm excited to see all of their first party lineup. Like seeing Uncharted 4 at 4K and an unlocked frame rate sounds awesome on PC. So yeah, I would love that.
Even just like what would be amazing for these games, honestly, just the modding potential of it.
Yeah.
Because modding is actually like a huge boon to a lot of games on PC. It's like one of the main reasons so many games stay alive on PC is because people could just continually add stuff. And I think some of the best games are kind of born out of the modding scene. I think people will be like, oh man, that's a good idea that the community came out with. We should do that for the next thing. And that's happened a number of times. I think isn't Counter-Strike literally just modded Half-Life?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's where Raven and other studios came from too, from modding Doom and Quake. So it's cool. It's cool potential. It's like a cool little petri dish to even allow new talent to kind of come out and scoop them up too. But I was reading, PlayStation stuff that they go by PlayStation Mobile Inc. on Steam, I noticed, and I was reading their page, and I did notice that with Ryan was a little, he vacillated a little bit in his comments because he says like the game sold and people liked it. That doesn't really mean anything, because I remember what Dustin said is true. Like the game was in horrible shape and it didn't seem to sell very well. So, and it is weird that they had Decima running and then had a game on Decima that was running worse when 505 was really responsible for porting Death Stranding. So it's strange. And by the way, speaking of Kojima, total left turn, but did you guys see the stuff with the tease, parent tease with Phil Spencer, and there's like a statue or something on his Kojima statue or whatever on his shelf where the Indiana Jones thing was? And
there was a Switch up there too. So is Microsoft buying Nintendo?
I agree with you, but it is. I thought that too, but then I was compelled because people brought up the Indiana Jones thing, and I was like, that's true. The Indiana Jones thing was on that shelf for a long time, and then suddenly, so I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think they bought Kojima Productions. I do think it's a signal, though. I think it's just them saying his game is going to come to Xbox.
Dude, Phil Spencer has cursed himself. He will never be able to be on camera without people over-analyzing everything in the background, like till the end of time now.
I would love that. If I were him, though, I would love it.
Yeah, that's fun.
I would be just being like, do whatever you want. there's a Catherine poster there.
I would fuck with people. I would like, if I was Phil Spencer, I would have like I would like spray paint a Vita in Xbox colors and like put it like like in the corner somewhere and just have people like really flipping out about it on Reddit or something.
I would be all about that.
That sounds great.
Yeah. All right. We have a few questions here from the audience. Your boy Nicky the Fifth wrote in and said, hey, Chris, he eats out at Five Guys Maldonado, and Colin, he gets eaten out by Five Guys Moriarty. That's not very nice. Dustin, you're not on here.
Thank
God. How well will Days Gone...
yeah, right?
Yeah, thank God, yeah. How well will Days Gone review on PC? I know Colin feels that the game never got a fair chance due to the early review code. Will you be willing to bet on an 80 plus on Metacritic now that all the bugs have been ironed out? I will say yes. I do think Days Gone will exceed 80 on Metacritic on PC because they will have figured it out. And I feel like games like that, especially, think about the horde mode or something like, or the zombie hordes chasing you at 120 frames. I think the game has potential to be beautiful. I'll also remind you it's on Unreal 4, so it runs on a much more PC friendly engine. So they have all sorts of advantages there. Chris, what are you thinking about the score?
I don't know. I think it's hard because my first impression of Days Gone is the same one that I have today, and it's just like I just really didn't like it. So maybe when it does come out on PC, that'll be when I try it again. I think that'll be a good opportunity for me to try this game with its best foot forward, even though I think it's a solid. I don't think it's going to be less than 75. But I don't know if it's necessarily going to hit 80 because I still do feel like just the direction and the tone and the story is just all weird and not necessarily in like a Kojima kind of like, ooh, how fascinating way. It's in like kind of, I don't want to say like a Ride to Hell Retribution way because it's not that bad. But like, it's just really awkwardly paced and it's just really stitched together in a really inelegant way, and I never even made it to the horde mechanics, but maybe I will now that I can run it at like 25 million frames.
To be fair, they buried the horde stuff so far into the game. I have no idea why they did that.
Yeah, which was a mistake.
Yeah, it was because it was the most fun that I had. There are videos of people killing the hordes with no weapons, which I think is so cool. Like just running around for like hours, just drowning them, and like it's doing all sorts of stuff. By the way, I will note that the game has a 71 right now on Metacritic, which is bonkers off. I mean, I'm sorry. It's not a 71. It's not a 71. Dustin, do you think it will exceed 8?
Yes, as long as they don't, screw up like they did Horizon. But as you said, with it being Unreal, very unlikely. So I'm saying yes. Yeah,
I think Unreal Engine is going to be a great advantage for them with this one. I always thought it was weird that they built it on Unreal Engine to begin with, but now it's an advantage later on. All right, here's another story that would be a top story usually, and I think this is the last one we can call that, but this one would be one too, number 7.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk 2077's long-awaited patch 1.2, which would have likely paved the way for the game to finally return to the PlayStation Store, has been delayed. Word comes by way of a 3-tweet sequence from the game's official Twitter account, which noted in full, quote, "While we dearly wanted to deliver patch 1.2 for Cyberpunk 2077 in the time span we detailed previously, the recent cyber attack on the studio's IT infrastructure and extensive scope of the update means this unfortunately will not happen. We'll need some additional time. Our goal for patch 1.2 goes beyond any of our previous updates. We've been working on numerous overall quality improvements and fixes, and we still have to work to do to make sure that's what you get. With that in mind, we're now aiming for release in the second half of March. It's not the news we enjoy sharing, but we want to make sure that we launch this update properly. Stay tuned for more information as time draws closer. Thank you for your continued patience and support," end quote. CD Projekt's long-in-development RPG launched on PS4 in December of last year, and it did so in such a catastrophic state that Sony pulled the game from the PlayStation Store the next week, offering full refunds for askers. The game can still be purchased and played physically, but it remains unavailable for digital purchase more than 2 months later. According to a report on website Bloomberg, however, the Polish developer may have more wiggle room here for sympathy than meets the eye. As previously reported and as noted in the statement, the dev was successfully targeted by a ransomware attack earlier this month, and the fruits of that attack are unfortunately ripening. The studio's employees, who are largely working from home, have no access to their virtual private network, meaning they cannot work effectively remotely. So, I don't know. So, I tweeted out, and this is how I feel regardless of the reason. I'm over this game. I don't care anymore about this game. I'm sick of talking about it. I have no interest in even playing it anymore. I just can't believe they botched it so badly. Dustin, talk to me about Cyberpunk and how you feel about it.
Yeah, I saw some people with tinfoil hats saying that, I mean, I've heard people even say that they think this whole ransomware attack is faked. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. That would never be the case. They have shareholders.
That would have, well, because the so-called, the people who apparently hacked them have started leaking everything. So if that's true, then they would have also had to been doing that.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, but in addition, I've heard it to that extent, and I've also heard that they're blaming on the cyber attack is an excuse. And clearly, like you mentioned it in the thing, they can't even work right now. I'm sure that, first of all, the ransomware went and deleted everything, and they had to restore everything from a backup. That's not something that you can do super quickly. In addition to that, they had to completely rebuild, I'm sure, their network, their security infrastructure. There was a lot of work that probably needed to be done because they're like, we cannot let this happen again. There are eyes on us. We need to be ready. So yeah, I understand why they're delaying it. It is incredibly unfortunate for them in the optics, because it, no matter what, even if you lay out point by point why it's delayed, it doesn't matter to the people that bought the game and are frustrated. I think that what's going to be the most interesting thing is that when this patch comes out, is it good enough? Because I'm thinking not yet.
No, I mean, I think 1.2 and 1.3 are supposed to be the current gen patches, right? And then it's the 1.5 mid patch that's going to be like kind of fixing it for everything else, I guess. And then they'll natively release it, something like that, on the next gen consoles. But to me, the big drawaway, Chris, from this is simply that the game should have never been released, and it's still not ready. And COVID has a lot to do with that. But I just think, you know what I was thinking about with this one? This is an example. I'm not a big fan of publishers generally, but this might be an example of where you need a publisher. You know, maybe you're getting a little too big for your britches in some way. I understand wanting to fund your own game. I didn't put it in the story, but they paid no financial price for this. The game made $600 million on its first day. It's not like they're just trying to make up now, but it's not like they have any financial reason to do it. I mean, other than the studio would have to probably close down because no one would buy another game from them if they didn't fix this. But the point is that it's a confluence of overambition, overpromising, overworking, and all of that, but also media hype, people blasting sunlight up this game's ass for years for no reason. And I just have a huge problem with it. So what are your thoughts on this, Chris, this kind of saga that we continue to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unfortunate. I mean, it's wild that a game that's already out gets delayed. Is basically what it's feeling like.
Yeah, after it was gold and then went delayed, which was the best.
It's crazy. This is a historical. Really a historical moment in the industry, I think, is the ongoing saga of this game's just consistent failures. And it's a shame because like my memory, it's been a while since I've played Cyberpunk because I beat it and it's a single player RPG. I don't normally play those over again unless it's like modded Skyrim where Randy Savage is the dragon, you know. But yeah, I don't know. Like I still have a good impression of Cyberpunk because I played it and I had like barely any problems with it. And it sucks to see a game that I think is genuinely pretty good just totally trip over itself just because the management was just so poor. They really could have saved themselves a lot of trouble if they just delayed it a year. And it's just crazy. It's just wild.
They didn't read the tea leaves right, I don't think, because they were in a pincer because they were like, we already delayed the game several times. People are getting impatient. But it's the whole Miyamoto, like, good delayed games are better kind of thing. Like, bad games are bad forever. And even if they just release it on PC, where apparently it's in decent shape, I think it has a 91 on Metacritic on PC. It has it in the 50s on console. And the game was reviewed explicitly on PC for these reasons. It would have even been better to say, like, listen, guys, we just aren't ready except for the PC version. And so we're going to release that and then we're going to continue working on it. I think they've made a massive mistake. They're not the only ones to make a massive mistake recently with their reputation. And just for me, I mean, they have a lot of stands and stuff like that, which I find weird too, because it's just game companies don't need your help. I don't need you guys to write in about why you think I should play or care about Cyberpunk. I think it's reasonable to be turned off by the lead up to the game. And that does blur into the experience. I'm still going to play it when it comes to PS5, but I'm not eager about it anymore at all. Yeah. I mean, it's just not looking forward to it.
Yeah, it might be a game you don't even play for a couple of years, honestly. I could see that. It's one of those things where it's like, if I hadn't played it already, I probably wouldn't want to play it at this point because it's just, oh my God, like I would be looking at it like, what the hell is this even, what is the shape of this in? And maybe that would be to your benefit because maybe you would like play it and you'd be like, oh, this is actually like, oh, okay. This is actually, it seems worse, maybe. Than it actually is, and I know it's definitely bad on PS4, but my experience on current gen consoles were pretty good, and my PC experience with it has been pretty good as well. It's just, man, what a colossal fuck up! Like this is consistently getting worse, just as time goes on, and it got to the point where like I used to think, and I held this opinion probably up until now that. I think the Master Chief Collection was probably like the worst launch of a video game in modern history because of just the importance of that series, the importance of that game to the system, and how botched everything was. But man, after the cyber attack and after this delay and after like, you know, a class action lawsuit and all this other things, like, man, this might be the worst one.
Yeah, it's definitely up there.
This might be the worst one. This might have taken the cake.
Yeah, it's definitely the one of the first games to go gold and then get delayed. I've never heard of that in my life. And
yeah,
what you ended up getting was that gold game anyway. So, like I told you, you would, because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. So we'll keep an eye on it. I'm glad if people are enjoying it. I remember the anecdotal evidence that really turned me off from it, for someone saying or writing like they were playing it on PS4 and they realized that when you turn your back to traffic and then turn back around, the traffic is gone. That's how the game deals with loading things in. And it's like, wow, man, this game is hanging on PS4.
There's a lot of compromises made on the older systems that are not ideal. No.
Yeah. So we'll see. I kind of wondered, I don't think this is going to happen, but I do wonder if the game will ever come back to PS4 or if they're just going to be like, listen, we'll get it back on PS5. The game is just too fucked, because Jim Ryan kind of talked shit about them too in one of those interviews that we mentioned earlier. So
yeah, I don't think it's going to come back to PS4 at all. I think it's going to be one of those situations with like, was that Mass Effect DLC that just never got working on PS3, but it was on everything else?
The Pinnacle Station.
Something like that, yeah. And it's just like, I feel like it's going to be another one of these where it's like, hey, man, whoops. Sorry. But,
well, this isn't the only delay, of course. There's another delay that's very germane to Chris. It's number 8. Not surprisingly, a disruption has been introduced into the timeline of future Destiny 2 support. Yet another casualty of the pandemic development scene. In an official post on its website, developer Bungie wrote in part, quote, "Last summer, we outlined our ambition for the next era in Destiny 2 by announcing the full arc, starting with Beyond Light, followed by the Witch Queen and Lightfall. As we begin to scale production on the Witch Queen last year, we made the difficult but important decision to move its release to early 2022. We also realized we needed to add an additional unannounced chapter after Lightfall to fully complete our first saga of Destiny." End quote. The post about Destiny 2's future is extensive, thousands of words long, and it goes into a ton of stuff if you want to read it further. Chris, decipher this for me. What's going on here with Destiny?
Yes, I mean, it looks like, obviously they lost a lot of support studios with the leave from Activision, so it makes sense that expansions would have taken a little bit more time, especially with, you know, COVID affecting pretty much everybody. So I'm not necessarily surprised by this. It's unfortunate, but I don't know if I'm really all that bothered by a delay. Like, I'm at this point with you, as we were just talking, like, a delay is ideal. You know, don't put something out unless it's ready. But I was reading a little bit of this, and the main takeaway from this negative news was a lot of the positive news that I found buried in this text, which I haven't had much time to read through, I'll admit. But
it's huge. The post is huge.
It's huge, but
it went live right before we started recording.
Yeah, there wasn't much time. But the thing that makes me happy is that crossplay is confirmed for this year, which is something that I've been waiting for ages, because I have so many friends that they're on Xbox and I can't play with them, or they're on PC and then I got to go here, and then that means I can't play with other friends, and it's like it's annoying because it's such an interconnected game already, where like I can turn on my Xbox, I can turn on my PlayStation, I can turn on my PC, and it's the same account. I don't have to download saves or anything. It's just there, and it feels like it should have. It just feels like a crossplay game, but it just hasn't been. And this is going to be huge. If that's what we get, you know, in place of this expansion, which is probably going to be pushed till I would imagine like February or March of 2022, then I'm totally fine with that. Take your time, you know, do what you got to do. I know Bungie's expanding; they're doing a lot of shit right now. I know they're working on an entirely new IP. If that trademark for or not trademark, if those papers about Matter are to be believed. So, you know, I'm not too worried about it. Disappointed, I guess, that, you know, it's not coming sooner, but ultimately I'm honestly more excited about crossplay for current Destiny than I am about an expansion in the future. Just because that'll be a huge reason to continue to play, and a huge boon for me.
It's funny. It would be, people might remember, I'm sure Chris remembers, Destiny leaked when someone left a binder in a bar. And it would be funny if a similar thing happened with, you know, you were saying these papers leaked their next game or whatever. The only reason I know about the Destiny story so intimately is because I was at IGN when we leaked that story, and how freaked out Activision was, and how desperate they were for us not to publish it. And actually, Kotaku ended up getting it too, but they didn't publish it. Scooped. So I remember that. I remember that very well. It was very interesting. People were very excited about.
What was it? It was just papers confirming that it exists.
Yeah, it was like literally some sort of marketing binder that I think people went to a bar in Southern California. They it might have been at Activision, like they were meeting with each other, and then someone just left the binder at the bar. Then person who worked at a restaurant got in touch with us and gave us the information.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It was an interesting one. All right, now we can move a little bit more quickly here. We can move as briskly or as not as we feel like we need to. Number 9, beloved PC RPG Diablo 2 is coming to both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 in the form of Diablo 2 Resurrected. This will be the first time Diablo 2 has ever come to PlayStation or to consoles generally, and is set for launch by the end of the year. The game totes remastered graphics and other visual, audio, and gameplay tweaks, but actually remains largely true to the original. In modern fashion, Diablo 2 Resurrected allows for cross-progression across all applicable platforms, including PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. And it's said that Vicarious Visions is working on it. Diablo 2, I always want to call it Diablo because that's what I used to call it when I was a kid. So I didn't know how to say it. Diablo 2 first launched for PC in the summer of 2000 and was the brainchild of the now defunct studio Blizzard North, which also created the 1997 original. 12 years separated the second game, with Diablo 3 launched on PC in 2012, PS3 in 2013, and PS4 in 2014. And Diablo 4 is currently under development and was at one time aiming for a 2021 release date on PlayStation 4 in the pre-pandemic world, which seems unlikely now. I assume this game is to take up the mantle there. So, first of all, this is not so much of a PC RPG. It's really an action role-playing game, but I'm not a Diablo fan. I don't give a shit about Diablo. Dustin, are you a fan of this series? You seem like a guy that would like Diablo. You seem like a guy that paints Warhammer figures and then goes into his bed at night and plays some Diablo before he goes to bed. Is that accurate?
What are you trying to say here, Colin?
I don't know. I'm saying that you are what you are.
Fucking
you
say
are
it if you're going to say it.
What do you want me to say?
I don't know. I feel like I'm being accused of something.
You're accused of being a nerd.
Being a fucking dork.
That's what I'm. Yeah, you're a huge fucking dork, and I'm accusing you of that. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Please.
So no, it's actually, what's funny is I think it was on Maddie's show. Someone left a comment and was like, are you really a Diablo fan if you've only played Diablo 3? And yeah, that's me. I've only played Diablo 3. And yes, I consider myself a Diablo fan because Diablo 3 is pretty fucking good. And so I'm very excited for this remaster to go back and play Diablo 2 since I've never played it. What's weird about Diablo 2 is that it's like after all these years, there are people that still play it. I have a friend, when we were in college, I would go to his house, and in the living room, his dad would be sitting in the corner and he'd be playing Diablo 2 on the PC still. And as far as I know, he still plays Diablo 2 to this day. He's just never stopped. It's like a dad thing. Like that's his game, right? So I'm excited to see it. I'm curious about what the response will be, since, I mean, with a game that is this, loved by its community, going back and touching it at all could be, is a risky move. But what they put out looks good.
Do you want to hear a little piece of information per your point about Diablo and Diablo fans and these nerds that are trying to claim fandom? Diablo 1 sold 2.5 million copies. Diablo 2 sold 4 million copies. Do you know how many copies Diablo 3 sold?
I'm guessing a lot.
30 million.
Woo! That's pretty good.
Million. So
that's
there
crazy.
are about 25 million people that played Diablo 3 that could never have played the other Diablo games. And therefore, yes. The only reason there is a Diablo 4 is because of them. If Diablo 3 sold 5 million copies, there would be no Diablo 4, and there would probably be no Blizzard anymore either. So, yeah, it's funny because people tried to get me into Diablo when it came to PS3 and PS4. I was at IGN. I'm not into the loot grind stuff really, with a rare exception. Even when I play the shooters I play and stuff where you're getting loot, I don't really give a fuck.
Yeah, it's more of like an accoutrement kind of.
Right, like I'm trying to get better weapons and armor and stuff, but I'm not like crazy about it. I'm in the color coded thing and all that. So
yeah, you're not stat chasing. You're just sort of like looking for cool new things.
Right, as I noted on last week, I don't even know how to look at my level on Division 2.
The Division.
And someone actually wrote in and like, you got to go to this screen and then this screen and then you hold down R3 on the screen and then it shows you your level.
Wow.
The button no one presses. Who the hell? You know when you go to a screen and you start just pressing every button to see what works? I do that now. I do especially when I play 2D games. I just start pressing every button to see what happens. I don't ever press R3, so I would never figure that out. I don't know. You know. Anyway,
It's a weird way of doing it.
Are you a Diablo guy, Chris?
I mean, I like Diablo 3.
See? You're not a Diablo fan, Chris. Sorry.
I honestly, like, I don't know if I would consider myself a Diablo fan necessarily. Like, I played a little bit of Diablo 3 when it came to console at a friend's house, and I was like, this is pretty fun. This works really well on console, actually. I remember thinking that specifically because it's a PC game, but I remember thinking, wow, this works really well on console. This particular kind of game, and I did like it, but I didn't necessarily feel compelled to go buy it or grind out a bunch of levels in it or anything. It was just like a day, and I was like, this is a good game. I enjoy this. But I will say, like, because we talked briefly, like very quickly about like, the concerns about such a beloved game in a series getting touched up. I think Vicarious Visions is probably the best. The best studio to handle this. Then, in fact, it gives me nothing but like I don't have any memories of Diablo 2. I never played it. But I would be genuinely shocked if the team at Vicarious Visions didn't make something that was ultimately very deserving of the acclaim of Diablo 2. I mean, with the just the Tony Hawk remake and the Insane trilogy and even their work back in the PS1 days with the original Tony Hawks, and I think they've got a good handle on how to recreate things. That are other people's. Like they only worked on Crash Nitro Kart, and that was like the worst car race.
Vicarious Visions is isn't it weird? Well, let me back up.
Yeah, they kind of don't exist right now, also, which is a little bizarre.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say because we have a question about this. I'm so glad you brought that up actually because Defy by Default wrote in. Says, hey CC with the occasional D. Blizzard just announced the remake of Diablo 2. For basically all consoles and PC with crossplay. For a lot of console-only games in the younger crowd, this will be the first experience with, in my opinion, the best Blizzard game of all time. But with Warcraft 3 Reforged being totally mishandled and people's perception of what Blizzard can do with a remake, is there any chance of it succeeding? Vicarious Visions has been announced as partnering on it, and they are hot off of the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, which are a great example of a remaster done right. I feel confident that they won't let down their fans again like they did with Warcraft. Anyway, I just wanted to hear your thoughts. So I will note, it's a little different because, and to Vicarious Visions' credit, they remade Tony Hawk. This isn't, as far as I understand, a remake. I think they're porting it. They're giving it a better field of view and some upgraded tools. So that's interesting. What I'm wondering, Chris, though, and I don't think we have the answer to this yet, was Vicarious Visions originally making this game? Because the Warcraft 3 port was very poorly received. I remember that. And I think a studio called Lemon Sky did that. I'm wondering if, because the announcement of Vicarious Visions leaving Activision was not lined up with announcing that they were making this game. In other words, I don't know why Activision and Blizzard are in the same family. I don't know why they were just like, let's just announce Vicarious Visions is leaving Activision when we announced Diablo 2. And they didn't do that. So to me, I'm reading between the lines and I'm like, I wonder if Vicarious Visions is saving this game. Because the other thing is that they seem to make one game at a time, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater only came out last fall. It was probably made under duress because of COVID towards the end. This seems like they came on to save it. Maybe. And so I want to learn more about what's going on with it because they're not even explicitly, like, I was reading the website for the game and they don't even explicitly talk about Vicarious Visions anywhere. So it's interesting, but I still think they're going to be very missed. But it makes a little more sense in context now. I just don't know why they couldn't tell us all of this at once. Instead of letting us speculate, like, why would you let Blizzard take Vicarious Visions? And they're talking about this like relationship that they've fostered recently and all this stuff. It's like, it's because of Diablo. So why don't you just wait?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It's very weird. I don't understand. I just don't understand. And I don't know. I don't care. I don't know why I care about marketing so much. It doesn't make any sense at all. Number 10. The Yakuza series has exploded in popularity in recent years, but Western fans of the franchise will know that there are a handful of spin-offs in the franchise that have never seen released outside of Japan. Among those are a couple of PSP-only titles under the name Black Panther Like a Dragon New Chapter. But bigger are the rather bizarre historical spin-offs called Like a Dragon Arrives and Like a Dragon Restoration. The first came to PS3 in Japan in 2008, the second to PS3 and PS4 in 2014. It seems, according to a recent interview given with Daisuke Sato, the director of the first game and longtime producer of the series, that Sega and Ryuga Gotoku Studio are interested in bringing them over to the West. Word comes by way of a translation website Kotaku provided that Sato did with German website JP Games. There he says, quote, "Personally, I would like for these titles to be localized and enjoyed by our Western fans. We were prioritizing regaining our ground with the series in the West from Yakuza 0, so time just flew by without an ideal time to release these games. In my opinion, the action is some of the best in the series, so I'd like to localize them if we get the chance. However, the game is also close to 7 years old." He's talking about the second one. "So we may need to put in additional work to remake it instead of a simple port. So the decision is a bit more complicated," end quote. The Yakuza series began in 2005 with the original PS2 game, and there are 8 mainline entries through last year's Yakuza Like a Dragon. Of the 10 series spin-offs, in addition, roughly half of them have seen Western release. There are 4 in particular that haven't. These are 2 of them. I don't give a shit about Yakuza, so Dustin, I'm just going to throw this over to you as a weeb. Does this do anything for you?
No, I think it's cool. It's just a unique idea in that they, to my understanding, with these spin-offs, the Like a Dragon, which it's confusing now because there's Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon. This
right.
Is
these are, by the way, I should note, these are the Japanese translations. I'm not even going to attempt to say the Japanese names of them. You know,
right.
Anyway, go ahead.
It's a neat idea, though, because basically, to my understanding, they just have taken the core cast and then made them in, let's see, I don't know which era, between 1853 and 1867 in Japan. And they've just kind of like transport them to that time and make their lives make sense in that era. So it's very much
it's like a comedy. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a neat idea. I remember when I first learned about these like a year or two ago, I was like, why haven't they moved these over? This seems like easy money for them, especially with the rise of the Yakuza franchise as of late. So to me, though, I mean, as cool as they sound, Yakuza is just too daunting of a franchise for me to even invest in. Like,
I'm the same way. I'm not even, because so many people try to get me into Yakuza, but it was never attractive to me. I just was never attracted to this franchise, but it has seen a huge renaissance in the West. And so getting these games over here would be pretty ideal. Do you have anything to add, Chris?
I know so little about Yakuza. I want to get into them eventually, but like I'm very much in the same boat as you guys, where I just feel like I don't even know what the first one is, you know, like because they all have these like weird names. And,
yeah, they remade the first one, right? Is that what the first one's a PS2 game? But I think they remade it. Yeah, so it's hard to keep track of all of it. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's just I wouldn't even know where to start. I don't know what the tone is really like. It's a game that I want to get to eventually, but I'm probably not going to get to anytime soon. Like definitely not this year.
It's one of those franchises I've just let go of. I'm just like, I don't have time. An inclination. I don't have a year of my life to last to play Yakuza games.
I want to play at least one of them.
Well,
that's my goal.
When you do, you can inform us what you think.
Yeah.
All right. Number 11. With all the talk of incredibly shady Chinese government and corporate money being driven into the gaming industry, it's worth noting that this is also happening thousands of miles away from there in another totalitarian society, Saudi Arabia. Word comes by way of publication Al Jazeera, which notes that Saudi Public Investment Fund, run by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, invested more than $3 billion into the industry last quarter. That money primarily went into buying shares of 3 iconic American publishers, EA, Take-Two, and Activision. The Crown Prince is a vocal fan of video games, and this isn't the first time he's come up. He's also on this show. He's also brought shares, as people might remember, in Japanese company SNK, shares which will expand to majority control in the coming years. So he's going to own it. Saudi Arabia is a complicated society with a complicated relationship with the West. Its glut of oil has for decades forced Western societies dependent on its supply to turn a blind eye to its rampant human rights abuses. Same-sex relations is a crime punishable by death in Saudi Arabia, while being transgender can have you executed, imprisoned, or even deported. Saudi women are amongst the most state and religion-controlled gender group in the entire world. Saudi Arabia itself is a totalitarian dictatorship run by a dynastic monarchy, and you could be imprisoned indefinitely without charge or trial or outright executed for being a witch, blaspheming. What am I trying to say? Blaspheming.
It's blaspheming.
So let me say that again. just to make sure everyone understands. And you can be imprisoned indefinitely without charge or trial, or outright executed for being a witch, blaspheming, or doing drugs. So I feel like we've really been beating up China lately, and with good reason. But now we're seeing Saudi. Now it's a little complicated. We have Saudi listeners. And I don't think, in fact, I know it's not about Saudi people. It's
all about governments.
It's about their society, which is kind of fucked. And I'm just going to say it. You know?
Yeah, no, it's all about governments, man. It's like, I wouldn't begrudge anybody in the Middle East for having a problem with the American government. You know, the American government's fucked. But
maybe not this fucked. To be honest,
maybe not this fucked, but it's like, you know, we're fucked outside of our own turf. That's where we choose to be fucked. They're just fucked in their own turf, which is interesting choice.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting to note too that this guy, this crown prince, is apparently considered like a reformer almost. Like women can drive now. Can you believe it? And they still have to wear head to toe garments, so no one can ever see any part of their body, but they can drive a car now. So
no. I don't know. This always makes me feel weird. This story. This guy, whenever he came up only once with the SNK thing, and I remember being like, oh man, what is going on?
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's only fair, right? We beat up on the communists for good reason. It's fun to beat up the communists, so why not beat up the Islamic totalitarians as well? I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely
all right.
It's definitely not unwarranted, you know?
No, it's not. Number 12, that Twisted Metal TV show that's been quietly percolating for a couple of years. It's real. Word comes by way of website Variety, which reports that PlayStation Productions, PlayStation's newish film and TV division, is indeed developing a Twisted Metal live-action TV series. It is described as a, quote, action comedy, and its elevator pitch, according to the website, is this, quote, the show is about a motor-mouthed outsider who is offered a chance at a better life, but only if he can successfully deliver a mysterious package across a post-apocalyptic wasteland. With the help of a trigger-happy car thief, he'll face savage marauders driving vehicles of destruction and other dangers of the open road, including a deranged clown who drives an all-too-familiar ice cream truck, whom fans of the game will know as Sweet Tooth, end quote. Interestingly, the idea for the show comes from Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, who co-wrote both Deadpool films, the Zombieland movies, and the upcoming Watch Dogs film adaptation. And Michael Jonathan Smith, a writer and producer of the acclaimed Karate Kid spin-off Cobra Kai, will be executive producing this project. So they have pretty big names behind it. Rumor is actor and renowned voice actor Will Arnett, who is also executive producing, may provide the voice of Sweet Tooth. Twisted Metal first came to the original PlayStation back in late 1995. The famous vehicular combat series last saw life in 2012's Twisted Metal on PS3.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris, talk to me. What are your thoughts on this one here?
I mean, I didn't know anything about a Watch Dogs film adaptation.
It came up very briefly on the show a long time ago.
Yeah, okay. Right, franchises are franchises. Okay, I understand. Yeah, no, this seems like a pretty good lineup of talent. You know, I think this could be a pretty cool thing. I think they understand the premise well enough that they could, like, this sounds like a good idea to, because my concern was that they were just going to do like the story of a Twisted Metal game, but like in a show, and like it's a competition and here's Calypso and you get a wish or whatever the fuck. I barely remember the plot of Twisted
Metal. Wasn't there live
but
action stuff in the original Twisted Metals too? Like
I don't think so. There might have been like FMV like cosplay things.
Yeah.
Like maybe like I can't remember.
Me neither. It's been
I'd
many
be
years.
making shit up at this point. But yeah, I don't know. This could be fine. It depends on, like, is this gonna be a live action series? This is a live action series.
It's a live action series, yeah, which is interesting because Will Arnett he's a famous actor. He's in Arrested Development and stuff, but he's best known for his voice work. So I think that was kind of the connection to Sweet Tooth, who's obviously behind a mask. I never saw the Deadpool films or the Zombieland films, but I did read about those guys, Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick. I mean, they are very well established, and Cobra Kai is incredibly critically acclaimed. So
yeah, I think these people can do a good job. I'd imagine Will Arnett would be providing the voice for Sweet Tooth because he's behind a mask, and Will Arnett's just not going to look like Sweet Tooth. He's just not.
He's not big enough. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's an easily workable problem. But it's just interesting that Twisted Metal's coming back in a show so late.
Yeah, I think it's very weird. I mean, when that was the original production rumor And I was like, why Twisted Metal? But it's real. Dustin, what do you think about this this pursuit? Pardon the pun.
Yeah, it's I mean, I agree with you guys. It's just really strange. It's a weird property to pull out of the bin for this. But again, I think like Chris was saying, the lineup of talent they have sounds very promising. I cannot see this film, or was it a TV show? I cannot see it in my mind. I can't like create the image. So I'll be very interested to see what it looks like when it's actually on screen.
It's funny. Do you guys know the Chris Farley gif of him like, looking up and, and seeing something and he's smiling, but then he like he's like horrified immediately. Anyway, it's a famous gif. It kind of reminds me of how I feel about like where I'm like all bright eyed and everyone's like, yeah, and the guys that did this are doing it and this, and then they say, and it's a Twisted Metal show. And I'm like, oh, because it's like, why, this is such a auspicious group, right? And why are you collecting them to make a Twisted Metal show? I just, that's my big thing. I'm trying to be optimistic about it because one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years probably was Mad Max Fury Road. I was absolutely stunned by that movie. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it was so, first of all, it's $200 million. They're not going to spend that much money on this TV show, but it was just one of the most incredible movies I've ever seen from a visual perspective. And I was wondering, like, well, are you trying to make a Mad Max? Because that's kind of cool. I mean, that's kind of seems like where it's really wild, really practically effects driven and all that. I really hope that that's what they do, but I don't know. When I think about all the Sony IP, I'm like, Twisted Metal is a weird one. Why did you guys select this one? I guess it only begs the question, are we going to get a new game? Or are they going to try to keep these things separate? And I hope we don't get a new game specifically because then I feel like that feeds the need to have this endless license cycle. So if you're going to make a Twisted Metal show, just make a show and leave it alone and see what happens.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, number 13. Here's another. This is a weird one. I got to give people credit for this one because they somehow figured this out. Famous actor Henry Cavill may have just clumsily teased, whether intentionally or unintentionally, his involvement in a yet unannounced Mass Effect project. On his Instagram account, Cavill showed him in the makeup chair getting ready to play his character Geralt in Netflix's The Witcher series. But in his hands is a piece of paper with typed writing on it with him teasing that it's a secret project. Website Game Pressure used some tech to clear up the blurring of the photo, which made some of the text blatantly clear. Mass Effect words from Geth and Tali Zora to Cerberus and Reaper are clearly visible, and Game Pressure actually identified it as an excerpt from Mass Effect 3's Wikipedia page. Henry Cavill is perhaps best known for his turn as Spider-Man in the DC, Superman, in the DC universe, though he also had a leading role on Showtime's The Tudors, where I loved him. And as noted, plays Geralt of Rivia on the Netflix Witcher series. So this is pretty crazy. I mean, because I don't know if you guys went to this website. There's this technology where you can kind of like unblur and focus on blurry images, and it's clear like that. It says that. I couldn't believe that you can even do that. It makes me a little nervous with all the shit I have in my background sometimes, my address and stuff like that. But it looks like a Mass Effect series might be in the works. And since he's reading it in the chair during the production of another Netflix series, one has to assume that Netflix is doing the Mass Effect series. That's my thought. Dustin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. I mean, something I didn't see anyone throw out is that maybe he's preparing because he's going to do voice work for the new Mass Effect game or something like that. Maybe they're trying to pull in some star power. Not that they need it for Mass Effect.
That's very compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But dude, I mean, Henry Cavill is fantastic. You know, he's just he's such a good looking guy. He's a PC builder. He's a gamer. He's what we all strive for, really, and will never become, quite frankly. So
no, I'm not. I mean, I'm not going to become that for sure. No. He's great in The Tudors. I fucking love that show. Chris, you want a Mass Effect TV show?
No. I look, man. Like,
I agree with you. Actually, I don't want to.
With these. It's not that I don't think it could be good. I think it could be good. I just think about like, what can a Mass Effect TV show do to better serve the universe in a way that a game can't? And the way that I think about that is like, you know, Mass Effect is an RPG, so it kind of already is a TV show in a lot of ways, and it's a better TV show than most TV shows are because you have a direct impact and there's all these characters and all these branching paths, and like even Mass Effect 2 with all of its like loyalty missions, it felt like a season of a TV show. Like it felt like this is Miranda's episode. Here's Tali's episode. Here's Rex's episode. And the need or the like what a TV show can do to bolster the name of Mass Effect. I don't know if it's as strong. I don't know if that's as strong a thing for Mass Effect as it would be for like a bit more of a traditionally linear or traditionally very individually character focused game like Uncharted or The Last of Us or Halo or Dead Space. Like I feel like there's a lot of series that could be made out of these universes that don't necessarily focus on main characters. But with Mass Effect, it's like I feel like I already have that with the games, and I feel weird about it. It could be good. I think Henry Cavill is probably not going to sign on to something unless it's pretty. He usually is pretty good about picking his things, and The Witcher is genuinely pretty good. Like I really liked the first season of The Witcher. I'm glad it's continuing, and he seems to have a lot of passion for the industry, and that alone is reason enough for me to be optimistic about whatever the hell this is. But this, I don't know. I'm not necessarily looking absolutely forward to this thing.
He has a lot of nerd credibility, is basically what we're saying, which I respect. I mean, I think that is awesome. So you assume that he is, I'm sure he's taking projects for money, but you assume there's a little bit more to that than meets the eye. So that's pretty cool. And I got to give credit for people for doing a little bit of legwork. I mean, not only being able to identify what the paper says, but then tracking it down to basically the ME3 Wikipedia page is pretty cool. So we'll keep a close eye on that. I'm not sure I really need that either. I love the way you described it as like Mass Effect already kind of being an episodic TV show anyway. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it would be like making like a Red Dead Redemption 2 TV show, Yeah. Like I just had that. I just had the best possible version of that I could possibly have. So like, don't do that.
And Dustin, I love what you said about maybe he is preparing to do voice work, because the new Mass Effect game is so early in development that you would imagine they might actually start doing voice work now,
right? Yeah,
and mocap. So since I'm sure it's going to be mocap, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Number 14. This is I don't care so much about this game, but this is a weird saga going around this one too. Yeah. Upcoming action RPG Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 has had a pretty tortured development cycle, and it seems to have just gotten worse. The game's official social media feeds put out a statement that hits those looking forward to the game with a double whammy. It's indefinitely delayed, and its developer has been removed from the project. Since they can't even nail down a loose release window, they've also stopped taking pre-orders for the game, relevant for those of us on this podcast, since the game is slated for release on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. So here's the deal. The publisher of the game is renowned PC force Paradox Interactive, the kings of the so-called grand strategy genre, and lots of other games. They own 33% of the studio who's making this game, Hardsuit Labs, the team behind the popular FPS Blacklight Retribution, a PS4 launch game in 2013. Vampires the Masquerade is largely popular from the tabletop RPG scene, though there are actually 2 games in the series, neither of which Paradox had anything to do with, from 2000 and 2004 respectively. This game was to act as a direct sequel to that second game. However, the game has lost much of its key staff over the last year, and with Paradox's refusal to yet say who is working on the game in Hardsuit Labs' stead, it's hard to know if a studio from within or outside of Paradox's grasp will be continuing. So if you read the letter that they wrote, they say how important the game is to them. Paradox is a very well-respected publisher. I can't help but wonder if this game is going to get canceled. I don't know that they want to do that. It's just interesting because they're in a bit of a bind. They own a third of the studio that they just removed from the game. So they've pretty much screwed themselves. And what that says to me is that the game is just not coming along very well. And Hardsuit Labs might be incapable of making this game. This is a very different game than what they've made. So I don't know if either of you guys have anything to add to this, but I just wanted to throw this out to the ether. Dustin, do you have anything you want to say about Hardsuit or anything like this?
I recall something that I saw that like the list of games the Hardsuit Labs have worked on outside of, I mean, their other main game is Blacklight Retribution. Yeah. Actually, okay, wait, I remembered something. Okay, they used to have a different name for the studio. It was called Zombie something. And so if you look at the list of games that they produced before, it's not pretty. So yeah, I'm not too surprised. And honestly, I thought that trailer that they released a few months back was not so hot either. So,
yeah, I think this game is going to get canceled, but we'll see what happens. I mean, there's reason to be optimistic too. Final Fantasy VII Remake ended up being excellent, and they took the studio off the game too with CyberConnect. So we'll see what happens. Number 15, the old Star Wars video game re-releases keep on coming. On the back of recent current-gen relaunches of titles like Episode 1 Racer and Jedi Starfighter, comes Star Wars Republic Commando, the 2005 LucasArts-developed first-person tactical shooter that only launched on PC and Xbox. That means that when it comes to PS4 on April 6th, it will be the first time the game was ever made available on any PlayStation platform. Republic Commando is now a so-called Star Wars Legends game, that's the old EU, that takes place during the Clone Wars, and is being published via Aspyr Media, which you'll note was recently acquired by Embracer Group's Saber Interactive. We talked extensively on the show about that. The PlayStation blog post is light on details, and it doesn't sound like the game comes packing many upgrades, though they do promise a solid translation of controls to both DualShock 4 and DualSense. Chris, you're an Xbox guy. I've never played this game. Have you ever played this one? I actually looked it up because I didn't even know anything about it, really.
Yeah, Republic Commando. Republic Commando is great. It's like a squad based, like kind of like tactical FPS. It's like it's one of the more highly regarded Star Wars games that's out there. And I played a little bit of it. I never finished it. This is back in the day when I was like very, very not. I mean, I still kind of am not really that big into Star Wars, but I played a little bit of it and I thought it was pretty good. But I think everybody kind of knows, like on the Xbox, you know, an FPS on the Xbox is got stiff competition. So like it just didn't hold my attention in comparison to some other titles. But this is awesome news. Like if they're going to re-release these with like genuine quality of life improvements, especially like with DualSense support, that's awesome. But one thing that's confusing, and maybe I just didn't know about this, but you said on the back of current gen relaunches of titles like Episode 1 Racer and Jedi Starfighter, did they re-release Jedi Starfighter?
Yeah, they re-released a bunch of games. I mean, I think there's like 6 or 8 of them now. So Starfighter's like on PS4. Yeah.
What?
It started with Super Star Wars back in 2015 or 2014, and then they've been slowly like releasing a bunch of these games. So Jedi Starfighter is on PS4.
Oh, wow. That's so weird. I had no idea about this. Because this is just... Because I was playing this recently, but it was just on the back compat.
Yeah, it's out there.
Original.
Yeah, they I think it's a lot of this Aspyr stuff, and I don't know.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it was during the time when Lucas, for some reason, had some weird deal with Microsoft, because these games, KOTOR as well, didn't come to PlayStation. Neither did KOTOR 2. So it's very interesting. So looking forward to that. And then finally, number 16 is a wrap up. Website Komatsu reports top-down shooter Postal Redux is coming to PS4 on March 5th. Motorcycle racer MotoGP 21 is coming to PS4 and PS5 on April 22nd. Roguelike Void Terrarium Plus is coming to PS5 on May 21st. Musou game Samurai Warriors 5 comes to PS4 on July 27th. Action shooter Foreclosed comes to PS4 and PS5 this summer. RPG The Caligula Effect 2 is coming to PS4 this fall, and survival horror game Tormented Souls is coming to PS5 later in 2021, though its PS4 iteration has been canceled. The website also reports that Square Enix's NieR Automata has surpassed 5.5 million units sold after roughly 4 years on the market. Publisher THQ Nordic and its developer Black Forest Games appear to be teasing a remake of Destroy All Humans 2, which came to PS2 back in 2006, though it hasn't yet been overtly confirmed. It's been basically confirmed, though. The official PlayStation blog reports quirky monster truck racer Can't Drive This is coming to PS4 and PS5 on March 19th, and also confirms rumors of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake coming to PS5 natively. It's doing so on March 26th, and will run at 4K at 60 or 1080p at 120 frames with other upgrades. Those who own the game on PS4 digitally can get this version for free. It's unclear what you will do if you have it physically. Website Push Square reports Subnautica sequel Below Zero is coming to PS4 and PS5 on May 14th. Arcade racer Hot Wheels Unleashed is coming to PS4 and PS5 on September 30th. And PSVR-centric shooter The Persistence is getting a PS5 patch later this year. By the way, the guys that made that game are the guys that are rumored to be making Horizon on VR. So maybe a connection there. Oh. Sony revealed Destruction All-Stars, which is currently free on PS Plus and slated to cost $70, will actually cost $20 when it comes to the market. So make sure to download that if you have PS Plus, because you can get it for free still. And finally, website GamesIndustry.biz reports that Japanese publisher Bandai Namco is continuing to gobble up shares of independent studios, acquiring a minority share in Limbic Entertainment, the studio most recently behind Might and Magic and the Tropico 6 government simulator. Now, Chris, before we move on, Stewie108 says, am I losing my mind, or is Chris pronouncing destroy all humans as destroy humans?
Destroy humans?
Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes I do that. If I'm talking really fast about it, huh?
I was gonna say, are you excited about the tease for Destroy All Humans 2?
I had no idea that was even a thing. I had no clue that was a thing.
You can search for it. It's like some weird thing where someone found something and then there was like this very cheeky response from Black Forest about it. And so it's no surprise. I think Destroy All Humans remake did pretty well, and their expectations are lower, you know?
That does surprise me. That surprises me for a number of reasons. I was confident that they were never going to remake Destroy All Humans 2. I thought they would have done Destroy All Humans 1, and then if that was cool enough, maybe they do like a new one. Because Destroy All Humans 2 is, man, Destroy All Humans remake already kind of angered people with some of the like the communism talk and like some of the jokes that they made at the expenses of like it wasn't necessarily like a super politically correct game, but Destroy All Humans 2 is wildly out of pocket. Like, that is a game that I was playing it kind of recently, like the original, like the PS2 on PS4, and I was like, wow. Like, this is just authentically sexist. Like, I would consider it sexist. I love it, but like, I'm genuinely surprised. Like, I wonder if they're going to tweak it at all, or if they're going to change like the overwhelming majority of that script, because it just doesn't give a shit. So this actually does surprise the hell out of me.
It's great. I mean, it's great. I love that. I love that they're potentially unafraid of the,
awesome.
the repercussions.
Wow.
All right, Destroy Humans. Thank you for writing
Destroy
in, Stewie.
Humans.
Stewie108, real quick.
Yeah.
It's funny that this came up in the show. He tweeted at me while we were recording that Bloodborne has scheduled maintenance that is new. So if this is fake, Stewie108, you're on blast.
Yeah, I wonder what they're planning over there.
We may know. You might already know from the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, maybe Bloodborne.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's actually a good point. I didn't even consider Bloodborne. All right. Well, it's a game from 2015, so let's talk about it in 2021. That's exciting.
Yeah.
All right, time to end, as we always do every episode of Sacred Symbols, with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience. Remember, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. More than 10,000 of you do. We so appreciate you, whether you support us at the $1, $2, $5, $10 tier. The $5 tier is our most popular. That gets you early ad-free access to our show. And the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, just like Oliver Gia did. He has something kind of sad, but I wanted to explore it. He says, Dear Curmudgeon Colin and Crispy Chris, Dustin's here too. This is quite a serious question, but one I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on. My father passed away last month, and I've been going through the motions of the grieving process. I've been doing all right. I've been doing all right, all things considered, but in times like these, when you experience great loss or life has thrown a curveball, do video games provide any source of comfort? If so, are there any games that come to mind? I live in Japan, but I traveled back to Pittsburgh in September to see my dad one last time. It was hard enough being in that situation, but even more so having to go through such a long trip during the pandemic. While taking care of dad and doing work around his house, I played Super Mario 64 and 100% completed it for the first time. The sense of achievement I felt alleviated the depressing situation I was in to some extent, and I think a big reason was because of how colorful and carefree the Mario games tend to be. I'm not entirely sure a darker themed game would have been more appropriate for the time. Anyway, thanks for taking the time to read my question, and congrats on the new Xbox shows. I hope 2021 is a better year for all of us. Thank you, Oliver. I'm sorry for your loss, and thank you for your kind words, though, about defining Duke. I often find with myself, guys, that I have a hard time focusing on games. I think I have a hard time focusing on them at good times. So I feel like I would love to think that I would get lost in something to distract me, but I don't know that my mind's really built for it, unfortunately, to like dive into a book or dive into a movie or a TV show. I feel like I would just not be paying attention to it. Chris, what are your thoughts on finding games as kind of a way to get through difficult periods?
I mean, I think it's valid. I think it's cool. I think it's great that people can do that. I have a harder time doing that with single player things. I think if I'm having like a rough time, if I'm like going through a breakup, or if like a loved one passes away, all of which are like, you know, common scenarios that most of us will find ourselves in at one point or another. if I'm going to play a video game, I need it to be with like my friends. I need to be like, hey, let's, I'm having a rough day, guys. Let's do like a strike in Destiny, or let's do some like firefight ODST or whatever the hell. And that's a lot more therapeutic to me, because that's not only that's like spending time with your friends, that's communication, but it's also having fun. And I don't know if I can do that by myself. Like, especially if I'm having a rough time, I'm going to want to go to a game that I know comforts me. I'm going to want to go to a game that I know inside and out, that I can just sort of like breeze through and kind of, and I don't know, like maybe that's a detriment because I know everything, so I have no reason to focus. So I'm more likely to drift off into thinking about like whatever bad situation I'm currently in. So it's like a bit of a double-edged sword in that way. So I'll try to find something new, but if I can't, I'll go to, a multiplayer game that I love, and I'll try and get my friends on, and that's usually how I go about it. But if I'm having a rough time, I'm usually losing myself in music more than games.
What about you, Dustin?
So Colin, I think I'm probably like you in what you described, in that I think if I'm feeling down or maybe have like had a stressful day, then I can, unwind with, a cheery game. Like I remember feeling that way last week with Mario 3D All-Star, or Mario 3D World specifically, because it was just so bright and cheery, and it was really able to help me unwind. But if I'm actively in a very stressful situation, or if I'm actively very upset, I will not be able to disconnect really. And it's unfortunate because it's like, there's very little relief for hyper focused. Well, it's like a hyper focus on something that you shouldn't be. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't really worked that out yet. Luckily, I think that I've been very blessed that I don't I haven't found myself in many like ultra depressing situations. I've not had people close to me pass away or anything like that. I mean, there's stress, of course, but so I don't know. That's kind of a vague answer, but that's all I got.
I just, those moments when you're trying to distract yourself and then you realize that you had been distracting yourself, you know what I mean? Where you went
panic?
10 minutes or a half an hour without thinking about something, and then you come to that realization again. I always love those moments, but they're hard to come by. I have a difficult time attaining them personally. Neo JD wrote in with a quick one. He says, what do you guys think of the rumors of Square Enix being bought soon? So I searched for this, Neo JD, and I have no idea what you're talking about. The reason I brought this up is because I was kind of just wondering, I wanted to kind of pitch this. I'll pitch it to Dustin first. Do you think Square Enix would be worth more or less than Bethesda based on its assets, which are not many? They don't have many studios. They have some, but more over their IP, because I was thinking about this and I'm like, I think Square Enix, if Bethesda at market rate went for $7.5 billion or whatever, which is way overpaid, then Square Enix is certainly worth way more than that. In my mind, Final Fantasy alone, Dragon Quest and all these other things, I feel like Final Fantasy is bigger than everything Bethesda has potentially, except for maybe the Elder Scrolls, maybe. So I was just curious, like kind of spinning his question. Do you think that they would go for more or less than Bethesda?
Wow, it's a really difficult question. There's so many facets to it. My gut is with you. I think yes, just because those, some of the Final Fantasy IP alone is so incredibly big. But is it just me, or is it like there's rumor that every studio is getting bought right now? Like, I feel like every other day that it's like, oh, Microsoft is looking at Sega. Microsoft is looking at the Dying Light devs.
Techland? Yeah.
Techland. And so, rumors of Square Enix being bought. There's just...
Why would anyone buy Techland? They're a disaster right now. Yeah, no, I agree. I actually think that part of it is like we are seeing a natural consolidation of the industry, which we should be scared of in some way. But I also think people are then wishing into the ether the things that they want to see next, right? It's like, well, I mean, because the Bethesda deal is fucking bonkers. I mean, I would have never imagined that was even possible. And as we said ad nauseum, I feel like the price was so high because they weren't for sale. So it's hard to compare and contrast those two things. because I don't think Bethesda's natural price is $7 billion or anything close to it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, the price that they're worth and the price that they went for are two completely different things. I think, and that's kind of what makes this question weird, because it's like, I do think Square Enix is worth more than Bethesda, but I don't think they're worth $7 billion.
Right. Yeah, that's probably
right.
Like
I think between Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and Kingdom Hearts specifically, and even just with Kingdom Hearts alone, with that lucrative that association and that partnership with Disney in the first place, like the ability to utilize that IP and that license.
Yeah, and they cracked. By the way, they cracked that nut before anyone did, which was amazing. It was when you think about when Kingdom Hearts came out. Yeah. Yeah.
No, they were smart with that. So, yeah, I think they're definitely worth more than Bethesda, but not $7 billion. Like the reason we've talked about this before, but like obviously like the reason they went for $7 billion is because it's who's going to turn down that money,
right?
Like everybody's for sale. Like there's no such. It's just a matter of like somebody coming to you with like a price that's that you realize is very enticing, and people don't know their worth a lot. Like it's weird. Like I remember listening to like an interview that Marty O'Donnell, the Halo and Destiny composer, he was like, when I was coming out of college, I was like, I would never. Somebody asked him, it's like, would you ever do music for like a commercial or something? And he was like, nah, I would never prostitute my art. And then he said, I'll give you $500. And he said, yeah, no, absolutely. Just immediately.
Yeah, it's true though. I mean, you can make anything for sale that you want.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's interesting. It's an interesting hypothetical. Square Enix has been in the mix of like a company that has been available in quotes for a long time too. And people will remember that it was 2003 when Square merged with Enix, making themselves even bigger. So I don't know. I mean, they own Tomb Raider and other stuff too. There's some interesting stuff here. But just a hypothetical nonetheless. And Neo JD, I have no idea what rumor you're talking about because I hadn't seen that rumor. Edwin Castillo wrote in, said, hello, come boys. We are 62 days away from NieR Replicant, and I assume that our bodily fluids are really gearing up for the approaching collective orgasm everyone will have when the game boots up. I bring knowledge. It is canonical. They are androids and automata, are wired to feel a sense of pleasure when killing, and will get killing and loving mixed up. Hot, if you ask me. That's it. Notice me. Dustin, we haven't talked about NieR very much on the show, mostly because Chris and I are not going to play NieR Replicant version 1.2 Pi, whatever the fuck it is. But I know you're excited about it. Now, this is a remake of and a reimagining of 2010's NieR, which was on PS3, different studio. That studio, what did they call it? Kavi or something? They don't exist anymore. But I'm curious, are you getting excited? Are you getting amped up? Are you getting worried that it's going to get delayed?
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm actually on media blackout for this. They just released some new trailers and stuff, and I don't need to see it. My point from a few months ago still stands that I'm a little weirded out by Toy Logic leading the development on this. So I'm very cautious, but I'm going to play it either way.
Yeah, of course.
So,
of course.
Yeah. Which I think that would be a good one to do a spoiler cast on. So maybe we can get, I know Maddie's going to be playing it too. So
I would love that. But, I mean, people love the Persona one. So
yeah. We'll
get that going. You're not going to play this, right, Chris?
No chance in hell.
Yeah, I assume not.
I have no idea what the hell I'm looking at when I look at this game, and I'm like, and it's weird because like I played a little bit of NieR Automata, right? And I was like, this is good, I enjoy this, it's fine. But I don't know, it just didn't grab me in the way that it seemed to grab everybody else. I just think it's a series that just like is just I don't know, just it fires my synapses in ways that doesn't really complement it all that well. I'm glad that people like it. I'm glad that there's a new thing coming out, but I can't pretend to have any kind of excitement for it.
It's
especially with the way Edwin talks about it.
Yeah, well,
I feel like
Edwin's a freak. To be clear,
I feel like Edwin, whenever he writes in, it's always traumatizing because like I heard the name and then like I forgot, like I totally forgot the last thing he wrote, but then the second like Castillo left your mouth, I was like, oh right, NieR.
It could either be it's not good.
Yeah, last time Edwin wrote in, Colin called him a terrorist. So just remember that.
I don't bandy that word around lightly, boys. So I played NieR for just a little while when it came out because I was curious about it in 2010 when I was at IGN. And it's funny, Dustin, because I remember the game being kind of normal. Like I think a lot of games are like blurring together in my mind now, like where I don't even know what the hell I'm thinking about anymore. Because I in my mind, I have this like really just this memory of playing like what seemed like a somewhat conventional quest-driven action RPG. And I don't know if that's actually what it was. So maybe I'm thinking of something else. Maybe I'm thinking of like Dragon's Dogma or something like that. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, it's definitely.
When did that come out?
2010.
The original 2010.
Yeah.
Oh, so that was around. Yeah. All right. So that was around the time that you were playing games and you had no idea what the hell. Because like I was listening to your Knockback podcast on BioShock Infinite because I love BioShock Infinite so much. And you were like, oh, when I first played, I hated it. I was like, what?
Yeah, I did. I hated BioShock Infinite. I hated it when I first played. I couldn't stand it. Like I don't. It is weird. Like things. I said on the show, I'm like, that was one of those examples where I'm like, what? Like when I go back to playing BioShock Infinite, and I'm like, what? What was wrong with you? Smoking a little too much of that hashish, I think, over there.
Woo. They got good stuff in California,
Yeah, I do. I know. I remember. I remember very well. Metal Kirby 27 writes in and says, hello, C-Men and maybe the D-Man. With the rumors surrounding Konami outsourcing Metal Gear and Castlevania to external teams, one question comes to mind. Who is your dream studio for each of these IP? Obviously, Kojima Productions for Metal Gear. But at this point, I think that's just a pipe dream. Long live Last Stand Media. So let me present this guys to you because we've talked a little bit about this here and there, but I want to present a very specific question to you guys. This rumor is Konami is outsourcing Silent Hill, Castlevania, and Metal Gear, right? Silent Hill apparently is with Bloober. I don't know why. We don't know where the others are. Where would you like to see Castlevania and where would you like to see Metal Gear? But I think the only rule would be that no Kojima. Let's be a little more clever with this.
I don't want Kojima to do the next Metal Gear, quite honestly. I think Kojima is at his most interesting when he's doing like I love Kojima's Metal Gear games, obviously. Like Metal Gear Solid 2 is like one of my favorite games of all time. I love Metal Gear Solid 2. But I also love Death Stranding. Right. And I wouldn't have gotten Death Stranding if he was still like toiling away on Metal Gear like some kind of a I don't even know, like some kind of some slaver, like we need Kojima as free as possible to get just crazy, like out there ideas that otherwise wouldn't get funded if they were brought up by anybody else. So I would say I would genuinely like to see, this is a hypothetical reality, obviously, but if IO Interactive did a Metal Gear game, I think it could be awesome. Because IO, and we've talked about this with the Hitman 3 in the Hitman 3 spoiler cast, and I've talked about it whenever I talk about Hitman. It just has such a specifically weird tone that I think Metal Gear kind of also does. It's not the same tone, but Metal Gear borders on this line of like it is serious, but it's also kind of like absurd and ridiculous, like what's happening, and like over dramatic. And I feel like Hitman is on the same thing, but it's got more of like a comedy tone to it. And I think that would just be like an interesting kind of thing to see. And I get it's like, oh yeah, they're the only people doing stealth games, so it's like obviously it's kind of like a relatively obvious choice, but I just think I think that would be really interesting. We're never going to see that, obviously, but
hey, you never know. I mean, what about who strikes you for Castlevania?
Where that's for real.
Who strikes you for Castlevania? Because I feel like we all agree, right? From Software should be the Castlevania studio. I mean, I couldn't even imagine a better team for a Castlevania game, actually, than if you're making a 3D one. If you're making a 2D Castlevania game, you want to go to Yacht Club or Way Forward or something. But, my answer, Dustin, for Metal Gear, though, is Remedy. I think that they could make a really weird Metal Gear game, and I think they have the chops for doing that. I don't think that's going to happen either, but
you're totally right. That would be amazing.
Yeah, Remedy would be great, I think, too. Just if you especially think about Control, you can almost see that as like a Metal game taking place in Metal Gear, like it's some weird government complex that would be in Metal Gear or something. So
yeah,
I like them, and I'm wondering, Dustin, who are you feeling for these games? Do you agree, first of all, do you agree with From for Castlevania, or are you feeling someone else?
Yes, I need to make sure, like, the question was who's our ideal. I think From Software make an amazing Castlevania game, but the realistic side of me is like they are probably have zero interest in working on other people's IP,
which is too bad because they really could do something with Castlevania.
Let's just dream for a moment here, okay?
Please, dream a dream. Yeah.
We have Blue Point, who just made a fantastic remake of Demon Souls, so they know the ins and outs of how Souls games are made. What if they were the ones, to go out on their first venture and make a new Castlevania game, like as if it? Well, actually, if Sony was involved, then, and let's say From said, "Hey, we don't want to make Bloodborne 2. Screw off," or whatever, and they're like, "Okay, fuck you then. We're gonna make Castlevania in the style of Bloodborne, and we're gonna have Blue Point do it." That would be cool.
That. I'd love an American studio taking on Castlevania because there's really, although it's risky because Mercury Steam was a Spanish studio, they did the newest Castlevania 3D games, which are not very good. So maybe a little bit of a risk to leave Japan. But I always love seeing Japanese games covered in America or vice versa. And you really only see it in the old school realm. Like Way Forward, of course, is a great example of guys that have been doing that for years. So I like that. I like what you're thinking. But I love I got to say, I love my answer for Remedy.
I think that's a great one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Jake Zielsdorf wrote into us, said, "Do you think people today are too moralistic in their interpretation of art? In the new mode of criticism, it seems like any art that's about something that has to have a message about that thing or a moral of the story. I look to art to reflect the complexity of human existence, not to didactically convey a lesson." So we talk, and we're not going to go into 6 Days in Fallujah anymore. Don't worry. We talked about 6 Days in Fallujah. I also had, as people know, and we talked about it, I think, at the top of the show, although we haven't recorded that yet, that I had a military journalist on to talk about it further. But what I did want to use this opportunity, guys, if I could, was to bring up what's going on with this Hogwarts Legacy game. Specifically with a designer at Avalanche Software in Utah working on the game. And his name is... and I want to make sure I know it's Leavitt. So Troy Leavitt. And people had started circulating this guy's YouTube channel because years ago he made like what would be considered, I guess, an anti so-called SJW channel with some pro Gamergate, if you want to call it that, sympathies and maybe a little bit more right wing. Frankly, saying a lot of the things, as I understand that I've been saying for many years, just about, equality and color blindness and whatever you want to say. I'm not going to put words into his mouth. You guys can go read his channel or watch his channel. I haven't seen it yet. But we've been watching this happen. I've certainly been watching it. A lot of people in the industry have been watching this happen to this guy. I reached out to him in case you guys are curious. I'd love to have him on the show, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I'd love to talk to him at some point. And so to kind of catch people up, this guy just anonymously out there working on the games, been working on the game for years. He's been in the industry since the mid 90s. One of his first games he worked on was Twisted Metal, actually. And he also worked on Jet Moto, which people might remember from the PS1 days. And so this guy's been around for a while. And so he's the lead designer on Hogwarts Legacy. And so this guy, Liam Robertson, who runs this small channel called Did You Know Gaming, it's like a retro channel, basically randomly found this guy's YouTube channel and then circulated it and went on Twitter and was basically like, "I'm not saying anything about anything, but look at this guy's YouTube channel. And he's associated with Hogwarts Legacy," and so on and so forth. And so it kind of created this cascading effect of everyone writing about this guy and how horrible he is and all of this and this kind of moralistic view of him. Meanwhile, he hasn't really said or done anything wrong. Dustin, I'm wondering if you've been kind of keeping track of this at all, and what do you make of the increasing moralistic, let's say, viewpoints of the industry, this puritanism, what I've been calling and others have been calling hall monitor journalism recently, which I fucking love that term. Why are we so attached to not only the art, but to the artist and who makes it and what they have to say? And what do you think of this whole situation that's kind of brewing with this guy?
Yeah. It's a hard one. And I think you, Colin, I don't know if it was on this show or on Knockback, you've talked about, I'm not drawing a comparison, but we talk about like the artist and the art. Like, can you enjoy the art if the artist was a bad person, which I don't think this is necessarily the case with this. But like you talked about that band where like the guy was like a predator, like
the Lost Prophets,
yeah, and that's like, and you can no longer. That's an offense so bad. But
right, and I think I talked about how recently I actually went and tried to listen to them again for the first time in years.
Right,
it was recommended to me on YouTube, and I'm like, I just can't. Like, it's just it's too much, Yeah.
But I mean, so getting to this situation specifically, to be fully transparent, I have not gone and watched anything from this guy's YouTube channel.
I've not yet.
The extent of what I know is in a fantastic video from friend of the show, Richard Hogue, with Virtual Legality, where he did a video covering it. And he's pretty upfront too that he just checked out some of his videos. But from everything that Hogue said is that it was very reasonable, well thought out, and not like in no way like harassing or anything. Very well thought out arguments presented in a clean way. Now, again, I've not done the personal research. I'm going off of a trusted source of our friend Rick Hogue. But it comes down to this idea, and this is another one of Rick's things, is that he always totes this idea of reasonable minds can differ, and we have completely lost that. The idea of if someone does not agree, does not line up with my worldview, then we cannot even hear them, right? Like there's no discussion. And so when it comes to this idea also of the hallmark journalism, it's just like layers upon layers of thinking that just doesn't even make sense. How about that? I'm trying to tie this all together, but I'm realizing there's just so many layers, not only like the blast, the low key, we'll say, blasting of this guy, the idea that his ideas shouldn't even be shared. Like, I don't know. It's like, I don't even know how we get out of this, right? Like this current landscape we're in.
I agree. I mean, I think it's very destructive. Chris, have you been paying attention to this saga at all? Or I'm using the word saga.
Not really. Like I saw a little bit about it, and I saw that somebody was in hot water at this studio for having made anti-SJW content, and I just immediately was like, well, that's stupid, and I didn't look into it. Because look, man, if this dude is like spouting like genuine Nazi talking points, maybe there'd be a problem. But like they would say that, it's gotten to the point where they can't even say that anymore with regards to anti-SJW content, because it's very clear to most people anyway what that means, because most people were watching that stuff back in the day, and most people kind of understand that, like, if you were watching that content back in the day and you enjoyed it and you're currently not a Nazi, then that kind of gives you a pretty good indication of what was far right and what was just kind of, relatively like edgy common sense. And I just don't think there's any justification for this. I was just searching through Twitter to see like some of the responses, and there was one. I just had it too. It was a good one that would have made for a good conversation. But it was just a list of things. Okay, so like, watch some of his videos. Here are some highlights. Regularly watches Ben Shapiro. Okay. Very critical of SJW policing. All right, it's pretty standard. Believes there's a double standard when it comes to sexualization in games, which doesn't sound all that controversial to me. The worst one here is cites One Angry Gamer as a great website.
Oh, does he say that? He does. That website's horrifying.
It's the worst. But again, like I would say that's a great website because of how terrible it is. You know what I mean?
That's
and how just like how unhinged that guy is.
Yeah, that guy's crazy.
But I don't know, like this. If this is what is cancel worthy now, then it's almost not even worth paying attention. Like I don't like Ben Shapiro. I don't think he's all that intelligent. But like, who cares?
Yeah, he's so milquetoast too when it really comes down to it, right? Like, it's funny because I just think
there is that famous video that I love of him going like, when when the sea levels rise and Manhattan floods, why don't the people just sell their apartments? which is like,
I can't.
Right.
I actually I used to like Ben Shapiro, but I just couldn't anymore after a few years. I was just like, I can't with this.
It gets a
grating
bit
as
much.
shit.
Yeah, but this is, I don't know. This is such milquetoast shit, and it's like, I don't know if any consequences have been levied against this dude. I don't know like what the up to date story is, but this to me, like, if anything happens because of this, that's insane. Because there are so many. The issue that I have with this is that it just draws. It takes what is otherwise just some dude with, opinions that aren't necessarily like super common, and it kind of pushes those people to get even worse. Because if you're just canceled by the entirety of the industry and you're canceled by like most of polite society, the right's going to accept you, because they market that. Like a lot of people on the right wing, they market that shit, and they're like, hey, we'll accept you. Come on. Gina Carano with like when she got laid off from the Star Wars thing, and now she's like doing a movie with Ben Shapiro. It's like they accept people. And if you're not willing to accept people and meet them where they're at and be like, hey, like you have this opinion that I disagree with, and you made this content that I have issues with. Let's talk about it. Let's maybe try and come to some kind of common ground. If we can't come to a common ground, at least let's communicate in ways that make us understand each other better, so that we're not like constantly down each other's throats. That inherently stifles extremism, because you're not pushing these people to a place where they're like, the only place that they can be accepted by are like the craziest people who don't have any qualms about anything.
Right.
Who are just, by the way, come to our Proud Boys meeting. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, the fringes, as it were.
Yeah, you're pushing people to fringes when you do this shit. And I just, I think it's inherently, it's just damaging to literally everybody. So stop the shit. Let the guy make his fucking game. I can't.
Yeah, I mean, it's very well said. I think I haven't watched his videos. I'm not going to speak to the content of them, but here's the thing, is that these guys are so assassination driven. A lot of journalists in games media and elsewhere, the tattletale journalists and the hall monitor journalists, that if this guy said anything, you would know, because they would have found it. So the fact that they're leading with basically nothing means that there's nothing there. And I do want to say, people come to the show and they expect that we're going to speak honestly and candidly. And I want to speak as honestly and candidly about something as I possibly can. The dude, Liam Robertson, who found and promoted this guy's YouTube channel in order to bring shame to him and to get him fired. Liam Robertson's a piece of shit, and he's a coward. And being a piece of shit is one thing. He's a piece of shit for sure, but there's nothing worse than being a coward. And the reason I say that is because he put it out there, and then he was like, well, I don't want you to do anything with it. We're supposed to, first of all, assume that this guy just randomly found this channel. No, he didn't. He was looking for something. And then he just put it out there. For what reason? So that a few days later, Kotaku would write a story about it and it would blow up. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, they cite Liam Robertson. And I also want to say that the person who wrote the story in Kotaku, Ian Walker, is a liar. Because in his story, he goes through all these things about all of these things that Levitt apparently said, but then reports to his points to his own Kotaku reporting and quotes about what happened with Nolan Bushnell and Atari. Now, people might remember this story from a few years ago, where Nolan Bushnell was basically character assassinated with complete impunity based on his time at Atari in the 70s, and was basically accused of sexual impropriety, when all of the women that worked for him basically said that never happened. And that they basically had a very bohemian, they were smoking pot and having sex and doing pills and in the hot tub and stuff. And it's the 70s in a company run by 20-something-year-olds. And he points to this thing like, look at our reporting, and blah, blah, blah. Shut the fuck up, Ian. I'm sick of these people going after other people and trying to destroy people and then acting very tacit, like, oh, well, we didn't mean anything by it. Liam certainly didn't mean it. First of all, Liam was probably searching for this forever to find something to destroy one of these guys, because they also hate J.K. Rowling. I mean, that's an important connection as well. And I just encourage people to read deeper into what people are saying other people are even saying, because they're just lying. And that was one of the things that I'm going to bring Richard Hogue back on in a couple of weeks, and we were talking about it privately, Dustin, where I was like, I'm curious what the point becomes now where things become libelous or if said slanderous, right? Where, like, you're making shit. You're just manufacturing things out of whole cloth, and it's just the internet, and so we let it go. Yeah, and I think it's time to stop letting it go. And
I don't know.
And I because it's defamatory. It's a game of telephone. It's permanent. It's the internet, and it's not fair. Someone needs to stand up. And so fuck Liam Robertson and fuck Ian Walker. And you know what? Yeah. I'm happy. I'm totally happy to say it. You guys want my honest opinion? Fuck those guys. And anyone who goes after anyone to try to destroy them and undermine them and hurt them for no reason. Yeah. No reason. This guy didn't do anything to anyone. Sorry. You know?
Yeah.
And by the way, WB hasn't said anything about this. Now we're going on 4 days. So bravo. Because they're not going to. This guy's not getting fired.
Yeah, I mean, this if like the list that I just read you, if that's like the most egregious shit on that channel, it's like one of the most milquetoast things I've ever seen. It believes there's a double standard when it comes to sexualization in games. Isn't even like a right wing. That's like you could come at that argument from a left wing perspective. You know what I mean? Like that's just like as a statement that is actually like inherently like politically ambiguous. Because you could be like, oh, women are really like too sexualized. It's a double standard, isn't it? Right? That would be what that is. It's just weird.
It's very weird. I don't know. Well, when you have nothing, Ian Walker's never written anything of consequence. No one cares what he has to say. So these are the kinds. So you have to go on Twitter and then regurgitate some other person's attempt to do I don't like cowards. I don't like cowardice. I just don't like it. Own it. And that's what I said to Richard, where I was like, I would have a lot more respect for the Tattletales if they just owned it. Just own it.
Yeah.
But don't be a Tattletale and a hall monitor and then pretend like, well, I wasn't trying to write this guy up. I didn't write him up. Oh, fuck yourselves. Final question. Moise Khan wrote in and said, one of the overlooked bits in the SIE president Jim Ryan's recent interviews is that 1 in 4 PS5 purchasers didn't own a PS4 before. Quarter of PS5s being sold this early to new adopters is huge, don't you think? So the quote he's talking about here, guys, is in the GQ article. Jim Ryan says, quote, "You may have read that we sold 4.5 million PS5s at the end of December. That's more than we did PS4s in 2013, and that was the high watermark for the PlayStation generation. So with everything in the world throughout last year, we feel like that was fairly decent. 1 in 4 of those who have bought a PS5 did not have a PS4, and around half of those are new to the PlayStation network. So it's really nice that we're able to bring in people from the outside," end quote. Dustin, what do you make of that? We got a lot of newcomers finding this console.
Right. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I saw some really blatantly wrong tweets where people were saying, well, that 1 in 4 is a scalper. Like, that's not how they measure that information. They measure it based on PlayStation Network and new accounts and things like that. So that's clearly wrong if you saw anyone say that, because I saw notable people in the industry make that joke. Anyway, I think it's awesome. I mean, people are hyped about video games right now, and I'm wondering if Xbox is also seeing a similar situation where they're having a lot of newcomers to their platform as well. So it's good all around for the industry.
Yeah, the numbers are interesting just because it indicates that people that owned so they're saying a quarter of people that own a PS5 didn't own a PS4, and then half of them didn't have a new PlayStation Network account, meaning that it's actually bringing people back. It's a kind of indicating that people had a PS3,
right,
and then left. So they're actually gaining some of those people that they might have lost last generation too. I just found that interesting. Chris, do you think that that's anything noteworthy here that you wanted to comment on?
I think it's interesting, but I don't know if I have anything new to add to it. It's certainly weird that people who the hell went from PS3 to Xbox One, you know? That's an interesting
I don't know,
jump.
Titanfall fans, I guess. Someone wanted to play
I guess, yeah.
Rise, Son of Rome. All right. Well, that's all we have for this episode of Sacred Symbols. We've gone for 2.5 hours almost, but we haven't even recorded any of the State of Play stuff or the intro. So
yeah,
it's going to be a nice
It's a long one.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice
It's going to be a long one.
All right, boys. Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate you guys. And thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of our show. Unless, of course, you're one of the character assassinators out there, in which case you got to get lost.
Get out.
You got to go.
You guys should check out that ridiculously cheeked up Chun-Li skin for Fortnite.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that?
No, I got to.
It's ridiculous. It's like the biggest ass I've ever seen in a video game. Nice. It's like, yeah, all right.
I'm going to have to check that out.
I'm in. Yeah, I'm not going to have a problem with it, but
I'm playing Fortnite.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Appreciate you. Dustin, we'll see you around. I'm sure you'll be back soon. Chris, appreciate you.
Of course.
Thank you all out there. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and Burbank, California, USA. The show was conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun Maldonado. Sacred Symbols' executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.